Good evening, everybody. Before we sit down, sorry, John, I'd like to have a minute's silence, please, for the people who are victims of the terrible shootings in New Zealand. So if we could just have a minute's silence, please. Thank you, members. Be seated. Apologies for any absences.
Yes, we have apologies from Councillors Hare, King, Whittle and Hammond. Okay, very good. We have apologies from Councillors Hare, King, Whittle and Hammond.
Members, I'd like to read the minutes. Is there anybody who wishes to make any comments on the minutes? All those in favour? Okay, I will sign those. Okay. Is there any declarations of interest? No declarations of interest. Okay, so we move on to item number 97, which is the recipient of the Mayor's Award. We have 3 young people here tonight, 2 of which I will actually award at the same time. I will start with Rachel and Charlotte. Rachel and Charlotte Smith, they're young carers. They live in a large family. Their dad has a heart condition, their mum has a medical condition, and several of their siblings have medical conditions and diagnoses. They support their family in a huge way in terms of emotional care and being there for their siblings. They are also 2 of our most outspoken young carers who continually promote support for others. These 2 girls don't only engage with the fun things of young carers, but they get involved in being open and honest, asking for support when needed, taking time to engage, and being active members of our Young Carers Forums in all events. During the Young Carers Awareness Day, the girls chose to come to the council's office at Shoot End after school to hand out flyers and talk to council staff. Rachel has taken a position of Vice Chair of the Young Carers Forum, and Charlotte has created and designed the logo for the group. They are both committed to engaging and working to improve the service, not only for themselves, but for other young carers. So if I could just make the award. second one is for Ryan Osborne, who's 13. Ryan is a young man who has shown character in the face of adversity. 4 years ago, Ryan's mum unfortunately passed away, and he is a carer for his dad, who began to struggle with his emotional health. Ryan was bullied at school, which affected his attendances due to his anxiety. At the start of the school year, Ryan's attendance was 42%, but through working with professionals, he's now attending 60% of the time. Ryan is a young man who embodies what it is to care for others. He has completed a triathlon to raise money for Help for Heroes, shaved his head for charity, and goes above and beyond to support other students whose families are going through hard times. Ryan is a young man of deep character and strength, who often does not see what he's achieved, not only overcoming his own struggles, but in the way he uses his experience to support others. Ryan deserves a place on this roll of honour, to show him and others that honour is not always about getting 100%, but it's about character, getting back up and working hard to overcome life challenges. So I'd like to award Ryan the award. Thank you. Okay, the other announcement I'd like to make tonight is the Mayor's Gala dinner was held on the 9th of March and raised £13,000 for the Me Too Club, which is a very worthy charity that supports young people. And I'd like to thank all the members in this room who supported me in one way or another. So that's the end of my announcement. I'm going to break from the agenda because there's been an event in the town centre which I think most people are aware of with regards to one of our suppliers, and Julian McGee-Sumner has asked if he could make a statement about Dorners. Julian.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and good evening everyone. Although we briefed the leaders of the two opposition parties, I thought it would be useful if I outlined for members today some facts concerning Dorners. Much has been said over the last few weeks about the demise of Dorners, our construction partner building, amongst other things, the Youth Beach Place regeneration. I wanted to correct a number of comments that have been published recently so members and residents can be reassured that the regeneration will continue as planned. Dorners won the regeneration tender in November 2016, following a vigorous tender process. At that time, we carried out due diligence and credit checks which showed that Dorners either to have an A- or a B+ credit rating. Couple this with our history of working with Dorners on other projects in the past, where they have delivered a quality product at a reasonable price, we felt we had the ideal partner. However, when Carillion went into administration in January this year, the board overseeing the regeneration met the following day. At the time, we wanted to prepare for the worst, but in the expectation that Dorners was still rated B+ by the two credit reference agencies which we checked on that day. When we met to review the contract every 2 weeks thereafter, we also found that we had regular reviews with our advisors William Bowden, who advised us from day one. It was only in late February that we were alerted by Dorners themselves that they had incurred problems with an overseas contract and that a customer had gone into administration, which had seen them face liquidity problems. At all times, they were upfront with us and reported back on a weekly basis. After discussions with our advisors and Bowden, and only being a matter of weeks away from completion of the site, we prepared for the worst but still hoped that the refinancing they were undertaking would be agreed. 10 days ago, being alerted that the company was likely to go into administration the following day, our AD, Bernie Pitch, put in place our contingency plans which served notice on Dorners to cancel the contract and take back the site. This was completed within a few hours, which I am told is a record in the world of construction, as it usually takes several days. The team here at WBC have retained a temporary contractor on site who has the responsibility for security, whilst we undertake an independent inspection to ascertain what has and hasn't been completed. It is entirely likely that this will take several weeks, but as most of the contractors on site are subcontractors, we hope to be able to retain the majority. The key subcontractors were back on site within 48 hours. The priority now is to get the commercial units completed as soon as possible so that the new retailers can open and serve our residents. Whilst there will be an inevitable delay, we sincerely hope this will be kept to a minimum. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. Okay, number 98, public question times. This will last 30 minutes and there will be supplementaries will be allowed unless you're asking a question on behalf of somebody else who can't make it here tonight. So I would ask David Bragg. David's not here, so he will get a written answer. Okay, Mr. Philip Meadowcroft.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor at the last meeting on February 21st, you said you could not deal with my question because the transcript had not been published. I'm working on his application to the Court of Appeal for leave to appeal the decision of Reading Crown Court in respect of Workingham's criminal prosecution of numerous defendants associated with their actions. The transcript has now been published, and there has been a reasonable amount of time for it to be properly digested and evaluated. I now request from you an answer to the question I originally raised. To remind you of my question, will you please give urgent consideration to suspending from office all those members and officials named and shamed by the Court of Appeal for a series of actions and events of unacceptable culture and practice. Such suspensions could only be lifted after completion of an internal inquiry whose unredacted report is openly published and fully debated by a full council meeting with contributions from Workingham Council taxpayers. Simple choice, Councillor, and crucial to your standing as a respectable and credible leader of Workingham Borough Council.
Thank you, Mr. Meadowcroft. Nice to see you again. As you have requested, I have given this serious consideration and I have consulted with our lawyers both internally and externally to Workingham Borough Council. And I can find no evidence to justify suspending members or officials from office. We are conducting an internal review of the matters connected with the Court of Appeal decision. However, a summary report will only be released. We cannot conduct a proper review without a full and frank disclosure of those we interview, and to ensure that that is achieved, we will not be releasing the review document itself. The Information Commissioner's Office recognises that there is a high expectation of privacy for matters affecting individuals, even senior members of staff, and given that much of the report will be personal data, we are under a legal duty not to release the report itself. Thank you.
Mr. Meadowcroft, do you have a supplementary?
I think so, Chairman. I assume the internal review will be conducted according to Chapter 9 of the Constitution. In the meantime, you've decided that you feel it inappropriate to immediately suspend the people named and shamed in the Court of Appeal. The hair hatch issue has eroded public confidence by Workingham councillors and officials acting unjustly and unfairly. And last week's planning inspectorate verdict on another hair hatch issue has demonstrated yet another major failure. This time in Workingham's understanding of the special circumstances applicable to Greenbelt Development Control. Under these circumstances, I am minded right now not to ask a supplementary question and leave your answer to be viewed by unforgiving council taxpayers and any members of the public and any members of this chamber and the public in this chamber who share with me the concerns I have expressed.
Thank you. Mr. Paul Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is to the Executive Member for Highways and Transport. Lap cars number 55, Durban Road, Signature, was knocked down in a vehicle accident on Monday, the 14th of January 2019. Same evening, streetlights number 56, 57 and 58 had also stopped working, which placed a large section of Bearwood Road in darkness. Since then, nothing has been done by Woking Borough Council. The residents and travelling public have now endured 9 weeks of complete darkness. How much longer must they wait until the street lighting will be operational again?
Thank you for your question, Mr. Fishwick. As you say, that number 55 opposite Bakery Cottage was knocked down on the 14th of January. The council's contractors had been due to replace the column on the 18th of March, but the electricity supply to the column, which was the responsibility of Southern and Scottish Electricity, will not take place until April. Scottish and Southern Energy power supply to lamp columns number 56, 57 and 58 failed on the same day that lamp column 55 was knocked down, but it seems likely that their cable was damaged during the accident. Loss of power was reported to SSE and they attended on the 25th of February and believed they'd restored the power, but the repair did not resolve the issue. The council has again reported it to them and have been advised that they have a target of the 2nd of April to restore the power.
Mr. Fishwick, do you have a supplementary question?
Thank you very much for your answer. GigaClear commenced work in Bearwood Road at the junction with Mole Road on the Monday the 18th of February during the school half-term week, and they reached Bearwood School by the end of that week. There had been a period of 4 weeks between the incident on the 14th of January and the start of the GigaClear work to install a new lamp column. That would have allowed Scottish and Southern to make a new connection. The lamp column was eventually installed on Monday the 18th of March this week, during the nighttime closure of Bearwood Road. Street lights number 56, 57 and 58 have amazingly come into light tonight, but thank you very much for getting that right. However, why wasn't this street light, number 55, the column replaced during the 4-week period between before the 18th of February? That would have allowed Scottish and Southern to make a connection as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
I might suggest that if you want detailed information about the repair and replacement of street lights, you actually send me an email and ask me a question rather than doing it here. I think it's much more effective way of getting an answer is actually to allow me to do the investigation.
Thank you, Pauline. Robert Tuck. Mr. Robert Tuck.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a finance question. Page 65 of the medium-term financial plan, approved in February, shows new income generation of £150,000 in 2019-20, £850,000 in 2021, and £1.35 million in 2022, arising from the purchase of commercial assets. The council sets up a property investment fund of £100 million. Page 80 of the medium-term financial plan shows it is planned to invest £55 million in property in 2019-20, which, coupled with the money already spent, indicates that the whole £100 million is planned to be spent by the end of the next financial year. When you do the maths, this new income on new spending is a return of 0.2% in the first year, 1.1% in the second year, rising to a maximum of 1.8% in the third year. The current inflation rate is 2.5%, so even at its best, this return is less than inflation, leading to conclude that this is bad investment. It's possible for ordinary people to get more or less risk-free rate from banks of around 1.5%.
Mr. Tuck, can you ask a question, please? I think we're all aware of some of the facts.
How can the council justify investing in risky commercial property with such a poor return at a time when all the advice seems to be that high street retail is very risky?
Thank you. Mr. Follett.
Thank you, Mr. Tuck. Of course, you're referring to the medium-term financial plan, which includes estimates on a deliberately very cautious set of assumptions around investment income achieved during the plan period. The very nature of the property investment market, being opportunistic and unpredictable, does not lend itself to precise planning of property acquisitions and income profiles. Therefore, it is to be expected that any interpretation of these cautious income assumptions would lead the question to arrive at a very low rate of return. way below the rate that has actually been achieved on property acquisitions to date, and indeed below the rate of return on pure cash investments. The investment principle, therefore, is to make a net return over and above the cost of capital. This net return or surplus is then available to fund the escalating cost pressures such as inflation faced by the Council. The Council's investment policy requires a positive margin of at least 2% of the Public Sector Works Loan Board debt costs at the point of allocating funds. This provides a prudent risk and MRP margin. So far as our purchases have shown a significant wider margin. Our current running yield on total acquisition costs is just over 6.5%. Plans are in hand to balance this risk profile by allocating a portion of the funds to lower yielding assets just above the margin threshold to increase diversity of securities. And the other point I'd make is that we are not necessarily investing in high street assets, and therefore the issues of risk that you refer to around that is actually not relevant to this portfolio.
Mr. Tuck, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, I do. Who is advising you on these investments?
I think the answer to that is a range of professionals. We have an in-house professional who is extremely skilled in this sort of investment. I think been involved both in the commercial sector and in our working borough council for probably the last 30 to 40 years. And he is extremely professional and extremely capable, and I have complete confidence that he won't need us to sway.
Thank you. Kim Frew.
Given problems with moving solid
Could you stand up? Could you stand up if you're asking a question? Thank you.
As I was saying, being so tall, I've had problems with the microphones before. But can you hear me up there?
They're right for some people.
Or bend down?
You've got a spare foot here or there, it'd be very interesting.
I'll bend down. The National Guidance for Countryside Hedgerows Protection and Management clearly states that a hedgerow is deemed to be protected if it meets any number of criteria. We understand the field south of Cutbush Lane, Shinfield, meets the criteria, which I won't read through, and therefore should be seen as protected. This national guidance also states the bird nesting period to be between the 1st of March and the 31st of August every year. As this year has enjoyed a record-breaking warm February, nesting is highly likely to have started much earlier. Can the Council please explain what actions they are undertaking with the landowner who has not only destroyed protected hedgerows knowingly in the nesting season, but has also removed approximately 400 trees, some of which have been there for over 30 years?
I won't read through the criteria.
Thank you very much. John Hawson.
Thank you, Mr. Bruin. Officers investigated the reported works, and it was found that none of these trees or scrub clearance works required consent from the council. Landscaping generally falls outside the remit of the Town and Country Planning Act, unless the site is within a conservation area or there are tree preservation orders served on the site. Neither of these designations apply to the land to the south of Cutbush Lane. It should be noted that the landscaping work can take place within the nesting season. The willful destruction of trees and hedgerows that comprise nests is a criminal offence, which will be a matter for the police. The works undertaken by Bellway have been supervised by an ecologist, and the Council's compliance officer has visited the site on several occasions to monitor what work has been carried out, and it has been determined that these have been outside of the control of the Town and Country Planning Act. Therefore, the Council has no powers to prevent these. The Hedgerows Regulations 1997 protect countryside hedgerows based primarily on their historical and ecological importance. Landowners that wish to remove a countryside hedgerow that meets the key importance criteria are required to apply to the local planning authority for permission. The LPA has 42 days to respond to the application and can then issue an either a written notice giving permission to remove it or a hedgerow detention notice, if the hedge is protected and must be kept. In this case, the council is not aware of any hedgerows that would meet the key importance criteria that have been removed on this site.
Mrs. Freud, do you have a supplementary question? I do. Thank you.
The national guidelines for land maintenance are clear. The pictures, which I wasn't allowed to put on the agenda, there are some copies here, if anyone cares to see, care about their wildlife and their habitat. I'll leave them here as well. This is not just maintenance of the site. This is not trimming of brambles. It's nothing short of wanton destruction of significant wildlife habitat, knowingly against recognised guidelines. A local farmer said on seeing what had been done, and I quote, "No self-respecting farmer would even think of doing this in this way and at this time of year." Bellway kindly sent me a copy of their ecology experts' report for the site in order to justify their action. It is actually dated after the action. Covering one's back maybe, but as one of our Shinfield councillors said, and quite rightly, Bellway and developer are likely to be covered by university insurance, so not a lot the council can do, and I understand that. But this action raises the question of what is right. If you can find time to look at these pictures, I will leave them here, and I know that some have been distributed. This event raises the question also, are there different rules?
Can you ask the question, please? Please. We've got a lot of people.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
This event also raises the question, are there different rules for developers and residents? If a resident knocks down a single tree before being awarded planning permission, what would the council say? Would it be, we can do nothing? We know that not to be the case. A few days ago, along with other Shinfield residents,
Mr. Freud, please ask the question of the executive member. You're just taking up other people's time. If you could just ask the question.
I think that just about sums up Wokingham Council's behaviours. So my supplementary question is, can Wokingham Borough Council please assure residents that they have and operate a fair and equitable approach to planning where residents are treated the same as developers and Shinfield is treated the same as all the other wards?
Thank you. John Horsell.
That's a huge question. Mr. Freud, I'm really very pleased to follow up on the evidence that you have and come to a reply to you outside the chamber. As far as the larger question is concerned, the answer is yes, of course. But thank you, Mr. Freud.
Thank you. Rachel Bishop.
The medium-term financial plan states that the annual revenue cost of new borrowing is approximately 7% of the sum borrowed. Between 2018-2019 and 2021-22, the total amount of borrowing is expected to rise by 212 million to 539 million. The revenue cost of the rise in borrowing will therefore be 15 million per year from 2021-22, or the revenue cost of total borrowing from 2022-23 will be 38 million. The new borrowing will therefore be equivalent to 2 years of council tax receipts and will add somewhere between 15% and 38% per year to the burden of council taxpayers. Does the council regard this increased annual burden, adding at best 15% and at worst 38% to council tax bills by 2021-22 as evidence that its spending plans are affordable, prudent and sustainable as required by the NTFP?
Thank you. Anthony Pollock.
The short answer is yes, of course, but I will give you the longer answer as well. And if you need to, I don't know whether you've got a copy of the medium-term financial plan with you, but I will refer to 1 or 2 pages. I'm aware that the council finances are complicated. I've been doing it a long time and I know how complicated they are. So to clarify the sentence on page 17 of the medium-term financial plan, which states that the annual revenue cost of new borrowing is approximately 7% of the sum borrowed. This relates only to new borrowing, which is not funded by other sources of income, such as developer contributions, capital receipts, etc. This does not apply to all new borrowing as referred to in your question above. Can I refer you to the capital resources statement on page 87, the medium-term financial plan. The first table on this page breaks down how the future borrowing will be repaid. The line called MRP, or minimum revenue provision, represents the amount the council taxpayer will fund, and that's dates here 6.2 million, 5.8 million and 5.9 million. All other borrowing is funded by other means, e.g. developer contributions, etc. Over the next 3 years, the annual MRP borrow will remain approximately 6 million a year, as I have said. The annual revenue cost of this new borrow will be funded from within existing budgets. Therefore, there will be no material change to these annual costs. There will not be an additional burden on the taxpayer. I can therefore confirm that our financial management continues to be sound, sensible and carefully planned to deliver on the Council's ambition, delivering vital assets for the community and creating valuable new income sources to fund escalating costs of future Council services.
Yes, I do, thank you. At what point will additional borrowing become unsustainable in your opinion?
I won't allow it.
Okay, so the maturity structure of external borrowing shown on page 78 of the medium-term financial plan shows the budgeted maturity of debt is as follows. Under 12 months 2%, 12 months to 2 years 15%, and 2 years to 5 years 15%. Total debt repayments in the next 5 years are therefore 32% of external borrowings. On the same page, the external borrowings are shown as 295 million. The debt repayment schedule would therefore indicate that some £94 million in debt repayments will need to be found over the next 5 years. Can the Council please explain where the money for the repayment of £94 million over the next 5 years will come from?
Absolutely. The capital programme is ambitious and its financing is complicated, including not only borrowings but also developer contributions, sales of assets and repayments from income. However, you are correct that 94 million of debt is estimated to be repaid within the next 5 years. This will be funded in the following ways. 20.4 million from HRA self-financing loans, which are funded by the housing revenue account. 35.5 million in developer contributions, repaying the forward funding of capital schemes. And 38.6 million from Wokingham Town Centre regeneration repayments arising from sale of residential assets. Therefore, I can confirm that our financial management continues to be sound, responsible and carefully planned in order to deliver the Council's ambitious capital programme, delivering vital assets for the community and creating valuable new income sources to fund our escalating costs of Council services.
Yes, I do. It seems to me that the Council is mortgaging not only current residents but also their children and their grandchildren with its ambitious schedule of borrowings. I'm particularly concerned about the £38.6 million of repayments that you hope to get from sales of property. Given the current financial climate, can you be sure that the value of assets that you currently expect will actually be enough to repay the loans that you're expecting them to repay?
The estimates that we have are conservative. The housing market currently may be a little depressed, but as you have seen, it's over the next 5 years, so I'm confident that we will raise the sums that we have indicated and maybe even exceed.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is for Pauline, the Executive Member for Highways and Transport. Will the Executive Member for Highways please tell me what on earth persuaded her to agree to a pinch point on Kingfisher Drive in Woodley? Residents have been complaining to me since it was installed and called it an act of madness, and these aren't my words, Pauline. Cars are parked for a considerable way along the highway, either side of the pinch point, meaning that cars travelling towards each other on the remaining carriageway have nowhere to go and allow only one car to pass through a narrow gap. For pupils walking to Highwood Primary School, there is the added danger of the sight lines being obscured by parked cars, described by residents as an accident waiting to happen. Please will you meet with me at the site to see what can be done to improve matters. At the same time, we may be able to look at some potholes along the road that the residents are persuaded to plant daffodils in.
Don't call it two for the price of one.
Thank you, Beth. Yeah, the pitch point was approved by the council in 2017, and it installed in Kingfisher Drive as part of the larger scheme for improvements of pedestrians along the full length. It was in response to concerns raised by residents about traffic streets, which shows you can't please all the people all the time, so they don't want them. The pinch point was placed in this location to provide a safer access for pedestrians into South Lake, linking pedestrian routes in the area and adding a direct and more appropriate route to South Lake rather than the vehicle access road. The principle of the pinch point is to reduce vehicle approach speeds at or near a point where pedestrians don't wish to cross a road, such as near to shops or on a route to school. And heavily parked streets that can be used to aid visibility of pedestrians so they can see and be seen beyond the parked vehicles. Pinch point improve visibility and safety of school children into Highwood Primary School. However, the pinch point at Kingfisher Drive is currently being monitored by the Council Traffic Management team with a view to deterring parking close to the pinch point so that vehicles can safely pass. I'd be very happy to meet you and so would the highways team on site to discuss it in more detail, and to be honest, I share some of your concerns. If you're concerned about potholes, please report them online, or if you want to send me an email, that's also fine. Shortly we'll have a new pothole reporting system which will allow you to use a GIS map to report, which should make it a lot faster.
Beth, do you have a supplementary question?
My supplementary then is, can I email you to arrange an appointment to meet there?
Of course you can.
Thank you.
Okay. Lizzie Bishop, I don't believe she's here. Adrian Masters here to ask a question. You realise what's the message, you can't ask a supplementary.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you. Yeah, this is to Pauline again. Does the council plan to raise car parking charges?
We have no current plans to raise car parking charges.
Okay, now,
It's getting too easy for you.
all the residents ask questions, you may leave if you wish to. Entirely up to you. Okay, thank you very much. We move on to item number 99, petitions. Is there anybody who wishes to have a petition? There's two. Okay, you have 5 minutes in which to speak on your petition. Sorry, 3 minutes. I'm talking 3 minutes to speak on your petition. Mr. Nickelberg?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 1,047 early residents are petitioning Wokingham Borough Council to work with Early Town Council as a matter of urgency to take whatever steps are required to enable a full-time civil enforcement officer to be allocated exclusively and permanently to Early to help tackle rampant illegal and antisocial parking problems. For instance, on the 12th of March, Mr. Stephen Smith, one of our residents, one of our many concerned residents, emailed me in relation to Loddon Primary School. I quote, "The CPE and Thames Valley Police Community Policing Team no longer have a visible presence in this area. I haven't seen anyone in the last 4 months. This is disappointing because parents see this lack of deterrent and then will choose to park or stop illegally without due consideration for residents or, more importantly, without a care for the safety of our children who attend the school. End of quote. Early residents do hope that their request will be given a favourable response. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Gareth Reid.
Thank you, Mr. Good evening. I'm Gareth Rees. I'm presenting on behalf of the residents of Reading Road, which is on the A327 Finchampstead. This petition confirms legitimate local concerns regarding traffic, speed and road safety. It's been signed by 75 of the residents, so not as many as you, I'm afraid. But that is a large percentage of the affected households. The petition does suggest a number of potential improvements which the Council is kindly asked to thoroughly consider and assess before suggesting an appropriate solutions to address the residents' concerns about this increasingly busy section of road. Lastly, I know you're very busy, so I'd just like to say thank you to Councillor Simon Weeks for his help and guidance and support during this process. Thank you.
And we will make sure the appropriate officers receive both of them. If you wish to leave now, you may do.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and there's item number 100. Who's going to propose that?
I've got a petition as well, and I would submit this petition that I have. That's it, please.
Sorry, we can't hear you.
Sorry, I've got a petition. I want to submit it.
On what?
It's in respect of a reduction of speed limit on Highgate Road between Basingstoke Road and Dobbys Garden Centre. A number of residents, I've got 59 residents who've signed this petition and a number of other residents who weren't able to sign it are supporting it as well.
Item 100. The review of polling districts and polling places. Who is going to propose that?
Obviously down to me.
Sorry. Did you have Gary, did you want to speak? Oh, right, okay, thank you. Sorry, I wasn't sure what you said. Okay, Anthony.
Right, my apologies.
Do you have a seconder as well, Gary Cowan?
Who was?
I've already got one.
I've got umpteen seconders, I think.
Everybody said he's
I know, I'm popular tonight, obviously. It's, yes, it makes a big change, doesn't it? Sorry, may I just find the relevant page in the agenda? I'm just... thank you very much. We have some changes that need to be made to some polling stations. One in Charville, relating to an Aldrington School, Shinfield North and Shinfield South, as in the papers.
Do you wish to speak, Gary?
Only to say I did attend the meeting when these decisions were taken, and I would like to thank the cross-party members who all appeared and contributed positively to the event. I think it was positively looked at. The officers are excellent, and I'd like to recommend this to council.
Thank you, Gary. Anybody wish to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm pleased to be speaking to support this paper this evening, and particularly for residents of Shinfield South. I've been campaigning for changes for this polling district in particular for several years now. They're very important changes that we're voting for this evening, because some residents in 3 Mile Cross actually have to walk past or drive past the current polling station in 3 Mile Cross and then go all the way up to the one in Spencer's Wood. it hasn't made sense. It doesn't make sense, and by making these amendments, it will really greatly help those individuals who want to go to the polling station each year. So I can't recommend this paper enough. It is great thing for local democracy, and so I hope people will support it this evening.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was a member of the working group that worked on this, so like Gary, I want to thank the officers. Great job by Andrew's team, and all the other members. We had a good discussion over this. It was, yes, quite boring, but very important. The remit for this comes under the Representation of the People Act, which says that we must ensure all electors have such reasonable facilities of voting as are practical in the circumstances, and that we must consider whether a decision materially affects the convenience of electors. So it's all about electors, and so some of the decisions we had to make on not removing polling stations from schools is something we'd like to do. I think the council wants to do it, the officers want to do it, the schools would like us to do it, I think, and the parents would like us to do it, but in the end, that's not our remit. Our remit is to make sure the electors have an easy way to express democracy. One of the biggest problems that the council has is in getting places that are available for a snap election, which is obviously something that could happen any moment. Surely not. She said not. Yeah, it did say not, so it's definitely going to happen, isn't it? So obviously local authority maintained schools are one of the few places we can secure. They're the least worst option. But it's not great for using schools, but it's a small number, and hopefully it'll get less. And I support the recommendation.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Central and local governments demand that parents keep children in school, finding those who take children out for such as holidays, and yet here we are being asked to continue to force 4 schools to close on polling days. Schools plan months ahead the days in which they close for teacher training, inset days, throughout the year, and working parents also plan to take these days off. There are, however, not sufficient training facilities for all schools to simply use polling days as teacher training days, especially for snap elections. So schools close and parents have to take unplanned time off to look after their children. In many cases, such parents do not get paid for days they do not work, and this causes unnecessary hardship on top of the lost education days of 200 or more children in the case of a primary school. There has been a shift from using secondary schools to using primary schools, but this is advocated by those who forget or never knew that today primary schools now also have exams in May. Closing schools is disruptive. I am grateful for the work done by officers in the last few years, enabling this council to cease using some schools as polling stations, as in this review. This has, however, not been the best council working party in recent years, since this progress has now virtually halted. There is an unfortunate tendency in this Conservative-led council to conflate regulation and guidance. This is entirely the fault of all members, since we do not demand to see such material and satisfy ourselves regarding the interpretation being presented. Members all too easily follow the recommendations put forward by officials rather than demand to see a range of options and demand changes. Remember, officials advise, politicians decide. With frequency, that is not what occurs, and that is largely the case in this matter. There are alternative places within these 4 wards. They may not be as good as schools, but are good enough and certainly equal to those in use elsewhere in the borough. Some of those involved in the working party simply do not want to make changes now. Labour colleagues are new to this process, so they can partly be forgiven for not more strongly demanding that this council stops using schools as polling stations. Remember though, that one of their recent Prime Ministers said that top 3 priorities for this government were education, education, education. They seem to have forgotten this. Mind, that is better than the Conservatives, so I'm not sure they ever understood the need for state education. Once again, we are likely to see Conservatives put education at the bottom of the priority list. Lib Dems would like a separate vote on each recommendation. We will vote against the first recommendation since this consists of continuing to demand that 4 schools close on polling days when there are alternatives available. We will vote for the second recommendation consisting of logical changes to 2 polling stations as Charlotte has referred to. We will vote against the third recommendation as this consists of kicking down the road any meaningful action plan to end the use of schools as polling stations. It is unlikely that the Conservative majority will allow separate votes, therefore Lib Dems will be forced to vote against the entire set of recommendations. So that residents can properly see how their members vote on this matter, I call for a named vote.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
David Slade.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Petition was our fellow member with Councillor Cowan and Councillor Doran on the working group with me, and he made it abundantly clear during that working group that he feels strongly about the use of schools. He did prepare an alternative proposal for my own ward of walking without, and walking without is unusual in polling station terms, in being a three-councillor ward that were elected for something like 6,300 with a single polling station, and that is a school. He prepared this half-baked proposal where he couldn't even get the name of the school spelled correctly, and his proposal would reduce turnout, increase car usage, and add congestion on the extremely busy roads of 9 Mile Ride and Old Woking Road.
Thank you. Got hold of this, which is your council tax today. Page 28. It says, change of polling station. If you live in Maiden Early Ward and usually vote at Maiden Early School, your polling station would be at Alderton School. But we haven't actually decided that yet.
Yeah, we decided last month, well, a couple of months ago.
Well, the decision is tonight. The ratifying is tonight.
For May, it was a couple of months ago.
Well, that's all I say. It's in here, and it is to be ratified tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I hadn't intended to speak on this particular issue, as it's come from a very hard-working, the recommendations have come from a very hard-working working group. We've made very sensible suggestions, and you carried out extensive consultation with local members, residents, local council, and local residents groups. As far as Maiden Early is concerned, the ward of Maiden Early, we used to vote in the library, and we all know that the school nicked that back. So we are being forced, not through any choice of our own, to find an alternative location. The alternative locations in Maiden Early are either right at the very edge of the ward, right at the very edge of the ward, or in the middle where people can walk to it. In the Maiden Early ward, the town ward, and the Red Hatch town ward, they can all walk quite comfortably to the Alderton School to vote. There is plenty of parking space, and it's a good location. We have used it in the past, and I would seriously recommend this council to honour the recommendations from a hard-working group which has been cross-party, and to approve it.
I'm not
The
objecting
members
to it. It's
of
what I
the
said.
residents of Maiden Early want it.
Not objecting to the vote.
It's just been pointed out to me that the items in the periodical you've just shown have been agreed at a previous meeting. They are not the same changes as we're discussing here.
Well, that's the case, I apologise.
Okay, just so we can clear that up. Okay, well, we're going through another vote here. Anthony, would you like to reply? You're right to reply.
I think it's a touch bizarre, but there we are. It's a council meeting. It's coming up for election time. As has been said, Mr. Mayor, we've had recommendations from a cross-party working group. I see no reasons have been made so far this evening to change the recommendations, and I urge council to approve them.
Everybody happy with the recommendations as they're here, and can we vote on them? Okay, name vote.
Did you ask for them to be separate?
You want to vote on all three separately?
I think if we have three separate votes, we will not require a named vote.
Your group's reliant on that, if you're in agreement with that. Okay, so. Okay, recommendation. Agrees to retain the polling place for the polling district listed in the attached schedule for the election May 2020. This includes two changes made for May 2019, where Cam 1 has Charville Village Hall and EFW and EGW have Adrington School designated. All those in favour? All those against? All those abstaining? That is carried. Number 2. Agrees to change the polling district boundaries as detailed below, and seeing that for obviously. A. Shinfield North, residents from Duckett's Mead to be moved from SAW2 to SAW1 so they can vote at the Shinfield Players Theatre. B. Shinfield South, residents from Church Lane and the northern end of Basingstoke Road and Hydehead Lane to be moved from SDW to SBW, allowing them to vote at 3 Mile Cross. All those in favour? That's unanimous. And number 3, agrees that although no changes are to be made to the school, we currently use all the polling places. We continue to seek suitable alternatives as and when they become available. All those in favour? All those against? All those against?
You need to get a bigger word.
Right. We're going to now number 101, frequency of review members' allowances scheme. Proposed by Julie McGee-Sumner. Do you want to speak, Julia?
There is going to be an amendment to this. We have sought some cross-party agreement, and I think we broadly have cross-party agreement. So the only amendment is that it's going to be changed from 4 years, which we did originally propose, to 2 years. This is to stop the IRP meeting and for us to completely ignore what they've actually said, as we've done in numerous years. So this actually delays it for 2 years. So we're looking at it again in 2 years' time.
Do you have a seconder for that?
Well, actually, I'm the proposer of the amendment. I'm the proposer of the amendment.
Got the wrong way round, okay.
Julian's the seconder.
Right, okay. And you're prepared to...
I'm happy to do that.
To accept that. Okay, as a proposer, would you like to tell us...
Yes, our group met on this, and we felt that the original proposal of having the IRP meet every 4 years was far too far apart. We do agree, however, that having the IRP meet annually is probably too frequent, and we therefore felt that the best way forward was to allow the IRP to meet on alternate years, with, as we put in the amendment, starting with the late 19, early 20, and then followed by late 21, early 22, and then on to every 2 years. That gives an opportunity for the IRP to review our position with the allowances that we receive, and to be able to fairly do things. We felt that by having it 4 years apart, either you get a big lump or nothing happens or whatever, and then it gets all whatever. And of course it was in the fallow year, which I know for reasons that it was, but we think that 2 years is by far better way, and I'm pleased that Julian has agreed on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? Mr. Gary Cowan?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've not really looked back at further of the original report, and the report was to review the amendment allowances for a 4-year cycle. Changing to 2 years is perhaps a bit of a step in the right direction. When I saw the report, I then looked at the video of the meeting when we discussed when the IRP report was discussed. And the report quoted 14 IRP meetings, of which only 22 members appeared. And the report states that 1 year set a negative message to residents as being the wrong time to increase member allowances. But how will they react, be it 2 or be it 4 years? I looked back at the video of the meeting, and I was quite quite surprised and very disappointed to see a senior Conservative executive member condemn the IRP for daring to meet for requirements. What an insult from the Conservative executive member happily taking £10,000 for their role on top of the council allowance to insult the IRP who are paid nothing for all of these meetings, and which councillors were free to turn up, which only half did. I must add that under the Localism Act, officer salaries are reviewed by a policy review annually, which looks at salaries backed up by performance-related pay for senior officers, and further down the pecking order, staff salaries are linked to NJC agreements, incremental progression and the pension scheme. So why are members being treated so differently? Are they second-class citizens, or is the reason more cynical? The report says we have only had 2 applications to date for the IRP vacancies, which is no surprise, considering the rise of the IRP is pretty much the same as the Conservative leaders. We've lost 3 in a very short space of time. I will not be supporting this proposal as it's devoid of any morality, but then I expect nothing more from the Conservatives, who should be ashamed of themselves.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's clear to me that as set out in our Constitution, members' allowances should be scrutinised every year. As part of this scrutiny process, Labour has voted year after year against council pay rises, because we believe that in a period of austerity, apart from having such a big impact on our community, simply isn't right that we should be awarding ourselves rises. Some may argue that the amounts involved are trivial in the context of the council's budget. Just this month, I learnt that the breastfeeding clinic in my ward is likely to close completely later this year, because their annual funding of just £6,500 a year could be cut. Even the so-called trivial amounts affect people's lives and should be scrutinised. I'm sure that some Conservatives and Lib Dems may argue that actually we should be pleased here in the Labour group, as under their proposal, there would be no rises in members' allowances for 2 years. There are 2 problems with this argument. Pay levels for most councillors are already still too high after years of increases for members in a time of austerity for everyone else. Second, what is to stop them proposing in 2 years' time that because there has been no rise for 2 years, the rise in 2020 should be twice as big? There's obviously nothing to stop that whatsoever. Unlike Labour, in recent years, the Conservatives and Lib Dems have voted for rises in allowances. Because of this, they have quite rightly come in substantial public criticism. It's clear to me what is happening here. These proposals are nothing more than a cynical attempt to avoid that public scrutiny. Every single one of the members who votes for this proposal tonight knows that. Our allowances are paid for by residents' council tax. They should be scrutinised every year. It's as simple as that. Thank you.
Thank you. Andy Croy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We will be voting against this. Since 2015, Labour councillors have voted consistently against pay rises for councillors. In a time when Tory austerity is attacking our communities and our most vulnerable people, the absurdity of councillors voting themselves extra cash every year will live long in my memory. We see Tory councillors complaining of being the worst funded local authority in the country, while at the same time always finding enough cash for only pay rise. Meanwhile, our poorest residents are still subject to the carers tax or see hard-earned savings whittled away by punitive restrictions to council tax relief. The amendment doesn't make things better. I suspect it makes things worse. The way it's been timed is that the next time we review the scheme with a review in late 2019, early 2020, the vote for that review will take place in late 2020. The following year is 2021, a fallow year. So politically, it makes it look like you are voting for a review after which the public will not be able to judge you. It looks like you are avoiding the issue. So politically, I'm afraid mixing with these guys doesn't work. Didn't work for them nationally, it's not going to work for you guys locally. The paper to support this is somewhat ingenious. I appreciate the current method of conducting the annual review is demanding on the officer hours, but we are supposed to be fit for the 21st century. Perhaps the independent panel should just accept written submissions and not have so many meetings with members. No, this paper has been brought forward for political reasons. It's been brought forward to stop the annual juxtaposition of Tory austerity with Tory councillors voting themselves an annual pay rise. It's been brought forward to limit the damage done to Tory candidates in local elections, and it's been brought forward as the Tories want to avoid the annual scrutiny by us and by residents. For our part, whatever the outcome of this vote, we will continue to scrutinise you, we will continue to expose the cost of austerity, and we will continue to ensure the residents know exactly who is wielding austerity's axe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. But those last two speeches lead quite nicely into what I want to say, because it shows the entire problem with the current system of the way council allowances are done, in that councillors are forced to vote upon their own allowances, and that gives a very difficult situation in which those who have an interest can always be attacked in that manner, and we will never get a sensible discussion about what is the correct level for council to pay. And that is why the Liberal Democrat national policy is actually that for all types of council there should be bands of funding within which you must operate set nationally, so that we no longer have councils able to decide for themselves how much they are worth, but it's done nationally, because there are councils up and down this country where people are paid excessive amounts. And if we compare ourselves, for example, to Bracknell, we pay ourselves considerably less. We're exactly the same sort of council in exactly the same sort of place, whereas there are other councils in Berkshire who get paid less than us. But there are also councils who are too scared to pay themselves the right amount of money to get the right sort of people, who can't afford to do it because they don't get paid, because they have no other source of income. Who I'm sure Labour would not wish to exclude. Being the Labour Party, they wouldn't want to exclude people who are either too poor or too difficult circumstances to stand, and only allow it to be open to rich people who can afford to do it for nothing. So we need to avoid those two extremes. It's going to be a political football for as long as we have this system, and I fully expect Labour to stand up and make the same sort of idiotic speeches next time. We have to be more sensible about this as a council and accept that we actually should be paying people a proper rate for the job, not an excessive rate, not too little because we're scared of what electors do. But I'm afraid as long as this system exists, we are never going to be able to do that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm standing here before you as somebody who did not take the last two rises, and I probably wouldn't take them going forward. However, I'm just thinking through the logic of our Labour colleagues here. They say they want an annual independent remuneration panel to make recommendations on remuneration. Yet they then go on to say, but we're not going to take them. We will never take them because we think it's immoral. So what is the point of having an independent remuneration panel if you're going to ignore them all the time?
Point of clarification, we didn't say we wanted to put the panel to review
The other end of the point.
Thank you. My point was that we wanted annual scrutiny. Annual scrutiny, not scrutiny every 4 years or every 2 years, after which there was a fallow period. That's what we want.
Thank you. Again, hopefully that time will be added on to my allocation. Again, annual scrutiny, we've had it. And they come up with recommendations as part of that annual scrutiny for a pay rise. But you are now going to refuse it. It defies logic. And we only have to look across the border to Reading Borough Council. Who controls Reading Borough Council? Labour. If you look at the remuneration they pay to some of their councillors, it's much higher than we get. So why don't you go back to your party and take a dose of your own medicine?
Just dragging this slightly further afield, I'd like to point out the hypocrisy of the Labour Party in Wales. In Merthyr Tydfil Council, which is exactly the same size as this council and has the same responsibilities, the leader gets £43,300 under Labour controlled Wales. So they're all very keen on talking about austerity and talking about people taking too much money when it's somebody else's council. But when they've got the snouts in their own trough in Wales, they have got no control at all. And just for information, the cabinet members get between 26,500 and 32,300. Chairs of committees get 22,300. It's complete hypocrisy. Complete hypocrisy. And by the way, I agree completely with
Mr. Mayor, I do think this is kind of getting a little bit off kilter. When I suggested this, to get away from having to keep referring back to the IRP and not taking the pay rises. But interestingly, when Andy mentions that we've all got our snouts in the trough, since I've become leader, we've reduced the cost.
I did not say that. No, I didn't.
Implication then. So, since I've become leader, no executive member has actually taken an allowance over and above their executive allowance. So that's actually saved this authority over £30,000. But how much of that gets reported? None at all.
Thank you. Emma.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just like to point out something. First of all, I'm offended by what the Labour Party has said, of which I would never had an increase, and I wouldn't expect to have an increase, to be honest with you. I'd just like to point out to them that in Bristol, 10% increase has been given to all senior councillors, and it's run by Labour.
It's a picture emerging.
Okay, do you want to... Sorry? Carl?
Thank you. I just want to make a quick point about, you're quite right, those things, they're despicable, those figures, as they are in Bristol. And they happen in most councils. Most ruling groups do this. They all stripes. I haven't prepared for it, but I'm quite sure that the Conservative groups, I can find the figures that are just the same. Absolutely. So please don't say it's hypocrisy when we say it. This is something that we in Woking Labour think. Okay? We'll take your point, but it's not hypocrisy, because we don't agree with them either.
Thank you.
Just observing the debate in the last couple of minutes just shows that how politically charged this issue is. I'm just referring back to what Prue said. I think the system currently we have is broken. We need to look at it from scratch, because whatever happens every year, whatever the recommendation is, we refuse it. And some people, some parties oppose it, and that is what they're going to do from every year. So it doesn't actually help anyone.
Yeah.
So either we say it's totally independent, either.
Would you like to make your point? You stood up. So
just another point of information. Shahid said whatever recommendation is, we refuse it. No, we don't. We refuse it. You guys take it.
I think he's missing the point. Andy's missing the point. I'm saying is, if it's independent, they do their due diligence, they come up with a recommendation. Do we accept that, or do we reject it, right? What happens every year? We reject it. So what is the point of having the independent panel if you're going to reject it every year? So that tells me the system we have is broken. It does not work. So we need to come up with something which is viable. Otherwise, it's going to become a political football every time we have this debate.
I think Lindsay, have you got anything to add to this? Okay.
More time and more councillors have spoken about our increases, potential RFI to allowances, and we spent discussing polling stations and actual local democracy. That is all.
Okay, Julian, you apparently you have the right to reply because you've accepted.
It's really just to reaffirm that we did this with the best of intentions for this authority. My original recommendation was to get away from this punch and judy politics. and actually have one review every 4 years. I don't think there's anyone in this chamber on any side of the political divide that does this for the money. Certainly becoming leader doesn't do it for me in terms of salary. But you know, the recommendation was that we went to 4 years. The Liberal Democrats felt that that was a little bit ambitious to go to 2 years. We're happy to support 2 years. But there's nothing to stop anyone reviewing our allowances at any point and scrutinising anything. We get scrutinised all the time.
Thank you, Julian. Now, this motion that's been tabled, has everybody got it? Okay. Would you like to go straight to the vote on this tabled motion? Any need for me to read it? I assume everybody here can read. Okay. Right, all those in favour? Okay. All those against? All those abstaining? That's carried. Okay, we move on to 102, which is the annual report from the Overview and Scrutiny Management Committee. Who is Holdsworth? Do we have a second? I have welcome. Thank you.
It's my privilege to present the annual report of Oversight and Scrutiny Management. I'd like to thank the members of the committee, officers, residents and community groups for their contributions. I especially want to thank Councillor Harry Barr. In fact, this is his report, as I'm new to the chairmanship and he was put the chairman for most of the year. Scrutiny is changing, and we're determined to make it more effective. This new approach started under our agreement with the grounds maintenance report and is continuing with the present scrutiny of 21st century council, which is still ongoing. There is more information about this new approach within the report. This spring sees the implementation of the new Glasgow regime, which is part of this process of making scrutiny more effective. So if the grass remains round your ankles, it's deemed to be a success. But if it's round your knees by June, then we want this report. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Did you wish to speak?
No, I'd just like to second what he said. We've looked at a number of issues over the year. We interrogate those things. We make sure we have proper training to make sure that we're up to date. And we invite a number of people along to pretty well every meeting to present their cases to be questioned. And I think we do a really thorough scrutiny.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak on this? Gary, Andy, anybody else? Okay, Andy.
I think there has been a major improvement in overview and scrutiny over the last 18 months. I've also been pleased that we've had chairman's briefings for the last 18 months as well, and that has improved. I still think we have a long way to go. I describe it as being we're in the foothills and we still got the mountains ahead, but it has definitely improved, and we have with the grass cutting investigation. That was a most thorough one, and probably the most thorough one the council has done, and I hope we can do a lot more of that. Over the coming year, from the meeting we had last night, we've got some very major areas. We've got the budget coming out, and we've also got other areas. And I think that we need to put more effort and training into overall scrutiny. I went up to House of Commons last year and was interested to see briefings that occurred, and with the councillors being questioned by the MPs. It was very interesting, and I think we are, similar to a lot of other councils, we are improving with overall scrutiny, but we still have a long way to go. So I think this is a major improvement for the council, but still more work to go. Thank you.
Thank you. My comments are about 2 or 3 of the committees, so I'll do it all in one go, if that's okay. So just a few words then. Although the reports of the Scrutiny Management and Health Overview committees on which I sit both reflect the work we've done this year, I'm afraid they do not reflect some very worrying aspects of scrutiny which which we have seen this year in these and other committees. Scrutiny committees are there to provide a form of counterweight or balance to the powers of the executive. The scrutiny is not there to defend the executive. It's one thing to be a critical friend and another to be an uncritical ally. As councillors, we can never ever assume that everything will be fine. We must assess possible risks to the operations of the council and to the interests of the residents. It's been very disappointing over the last year to have to really fight to get items either on the agenda or on the agenda in a timely manner. With the Wokingham Marketplace works, the issue is continually kicked down the road. And surprise, surprise, once the issue was considered, it came with the most damning report of project failures, lessons to be learned imaginable. The fact is, all of those lessons were already known by the residents and any councillors who was talking to residents. Our scrutiny system failed our residents because we did not scrutinise in a timely manner. With the collapse of Dornus, I've been pressing for proper scrutiny to examine not only Peach Place, but also other construction contracts we have. I'm pressing for scrutiny not because I know that there has been poor judgment or unacceptable levels of risk, but because I do not know that there hasn't been poor judgment or unacceptable risks. And the response I've received to this request has been a combination of read the press release, the executive will manage it, we do not have executive powers, it will be examined by another committee, a committee which won't meet for 3 months. And finally, an inappropriate chair of another committee was given a report to present to us in lieu of proper scrutiny. It seems to me that these responses are the very antithesis of what scrutiny should be about. I should say at this point that I was grateful for the briefing by the Regeneration Board, but it was not a scrutiny exercise. On Brexit, whatever one's thoughts on Brexit, one has to consider that there may be risks associated with Brexit. Our job then is to try and understand the level of risk, the level of preparedness, and whether or not the borough and its residents are protected against whatever is there. It's that simple. You have to consider it. But getting these items on the agenda has been a real fight. It may be that residents are not shouting about Brexit in the same way they're shouting about grass, but surely we have to take a step back and take a longer view to anticipate problems coming down the tracks. And finally, the meetings where members do not say anything. Our members send us here to do a job. Part of that job involves turning up prepared and willing to challenge both officers, the executive, and visitors from outside bodies. I've been very disappointed with the number of times where members have either not had questions or have clearly not read the agenda, because if they had read the agenda, they wouldn't be asking the questions they're asking. If we are to do justice to our residents, we must try harder, and we must have a stronger scrutiny culture. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Overview Scrutiny Committee or Committee's role is to investigate the policies of the executive and their implementation, issuing reports and drawing attention to shortcomings. I think we all understand that. Our Overview and Scrutiny Committee fits that bill perfectly, as can be seen on yesterday's agenda. But as I see it, it's much more interesting to look at what they do not scrutinise as to what they do scrutinise. Recent examples are, of course, the budget and the council tax reduction scheme, which was passed by the Conservatives in this chamber, only for the opposition to propose to recommend some changes, and they were picked up on. I just wonder, had these policies been through the Overview and Scrutiny Committee before they came to this council, might they not have been better received? Another classic that's what to leave out is the one we've just debated, review of members' allowance scheme. We've had a big ding-dong about that just a few minutes ago. But again, had that been looked at by the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, it's quite possible that with the use of task and fishing groups and other bodies, that they would be in a better position to have brought that to council, and we would all be much more comfortable with the recommendation. They operate in the public arena. They can, as I said, they can have task and finishing groups, and being at the meeting with them yesterday, I was very impressed with how professional and good they were. It seems a terrible shame that not all the policies we try and bring forward in this council don't go via the Overview and Scrutiny route. And it just seems that the ones that don't are the ones that cause us grief in this chamber, and I would suggest that you look more closely at that.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else wish to speak on that? So, you have a right to reply, Philip?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure I can do anything to reply to Mr. Mayor. We had a very lively meeting last night. We discussed all of the agenda items. I find that Mr. Crawley, Councillor Crawley, a little impetuous, a little, what can I say?
Exactly with that.
He concerns himself over matters that are of no concern at the time. We will do a proper scrutiny of the matter to do with the illness. Of course we will. Not the time to rush into such a matter when the officers are dealing with the subject in a quite proper way. They have informed Mr. Boyd of that and also the opposition. And we had a briefing from Mr. Murphy, and the problem was well under control. And we thank the officers for the timely way that they have managed that situation.
Okay, is everybody prepared to vote as it appears in the agenda? All those in favour? All those against? All those abstaining? That is carried. Thank you. Okay, the audit committee and report. Chris Smith.
I'll be proposing.
Do you have a second there?
Yeah.
Thank you. Would you like to speak, please?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Firstly, I'd like to thank the members and officers who have supported the audit committee this year. We've done a lot of quite interesting things, and it's been my first year of chairing an audit committee, so I'd also like to thank Councillor David Shopping for the support and mentoring he has shown me during that period. Audit is not just about rubber stamping the annual accounts each year. We do a number of very interesting things and investigations, all of which are detailed in the report, but there are two things I'd like to draw councillors' attention to. The first thing is our review of the risk register. This year we had an extra meeting. I'm not sure all members of the committee thanked me for this. That meeting was dedicated just to looking at the risk register to make sure that we understood what was in there, what the new risks were, did we have extra ones, and as part of that ongoing process we're also calling in directors of the council each time we have a meeting on a different area so that we as councillors can make sure we understand what risks are not necessarily on the main corporate register, but what are the focus areas and what we might be wanting to look at later. So that's something that started this year and I really want to keep continuing, and I think adds a lot of value as well. The second one is the council tax reduction. The special task and finish group that was pulled together at very short notice, and I'd like to thank all councillors who got involved in that. There was an attempt at making cross-party. Unfortunately, I do believe some emails ended up in the wrong folders, so not all people could make it, but I thought it was a very valuable experience. And again, I'd like to thank the officers for their support there at such short notice. And it's also an area that we will be looking again at audit over the next year to make sure that these failings and recommendations we identified are being implemented. I really hope that everybody does read the report to understand what audit does. For those of you who don't know, audit must also improve the Treasury management strategy each year before it goes into the budget. I am a professional accountant and I admit that it's occasionally a bit dense for me. So one thing I'd like to work on this year is making sure that council financial documents are more accessible to members of the public and in some, probably a lot of cases, councillors as well. Again, I'd just like to again extend my thanks to councillors and officers for their support, and if anyone has any questions, I'll endeavour to answer them.
In the last couple of minutes, it just shows that how politically charged this issue is. I'm just referring back to what Prue said. I think the system currently we have is broken. We need to look at it from scratch, because whatever happens every year, whatever the recommendation is, we refuse it. Of course. And some people, some parties oppose it, and that is what they're going to do from every year. So it doesn't actually help anyone.
Yeah.
So either we say it's totally independent, either, carry on?
Would you like to make your point? You stood up. So if you'd like to,
Yeah, just another point of information. Shahid said whatever recommendation is, we refuse it. No, we don't. We refuse it. You guys take it.
I think he's missing the point. I think he's missing the point. I'm saying is, if it's independent, they do their due diligence, they come up with a recommendation. Do we accept that, or do we reject it? Right? What happens every year? We reject it. So what is the point of having the independent panel?
At a certain time of year, we start getting a few more in, so it has changed in the last month or so. They'll be reported next year. The thing that did want to draw to people's attention was on page 79, and this is the Committee on Standards in Public Life. This is a report that's come in, which covers many items on how spruce standards should be investigated and reviewed. And I wanted to go up to the second paragraph from the bottom on that. In the middle of it, it was recognised that there would always be robust disagreement in the political arena. However, the tone of engagement should be civil and constructive. And I think if we all pay attention to that one, we'll probably get rid of quite a few of the internal complaints that come with the standards. So I would also add back to that respectfulness in the Thank you.
Harry, did you wish to say anything?
I'll hold the gentleman.
Okay. Is there anybody who wishes to say?
I think the Chamber knows I've had concerns about the standards arena for a while. Our group will be putting some proposals together over the coming weeks, and we will present them at the appropriate time, so I won't go into detail. There are issues about the length of time events have taken. Some have taken 6, 9, 10 months to get resolved, and people are left in wondering what's going on. I think there are cases that are clearly not appropriate to be followed through have been done, and also when it comes to the final committee, which is currently 3 with the majority, I did a little while ago suggest that that committee be made 5, and that we have 2 independent people on that committee, and one of the independents become chair, because that then makes it much more neutral. And I think that we do need to update what we have, and we need to think more about some of the points that you raised, Ken. I think we're touching on some of it. There are things coming in and complaints being made that are frivolous, and yet they still get taken through to some serious stages, and people are not happy with how things are done. So I think we do need a review, and as I said, we'll put proposals together and they'll come through in due course. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm quite happy with the report, and I'd like to propose that it be noted by the Chamber.
Do you wish to reply?
No, not too much. Just to say thank you, Lindsay, and look forward to seeing that. We're always open to these things. This CPSL report that's coming back may already be addressed on what we're talking about, so keep your fingers crossed.
Thank you very much. Everybody prepared to accept the report that appears in the agenda. All those in favour? All those against? All those abstaining? That is carried. Okay, we're now on to 105, which is the Woking and Borough Wellbeing Board Annual Report. be proposed by Harry. Did you wish to speak?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I will. It is
You
my...
want to second that?
Thank you. It is indeed my pleasure to actually present this report, Mr. Mayor, and I also thank all the officers involved in putting this report together. The Walking Borough Wellbeing Board has recently completed its 6th year formal committee. Health and Wellbeing Board is a statutory forum where key representatives from health, social care and the community can work in a partnership to reduce health inequalities locally and to improve the overall health and well-being of our residents. Over the next 3 years, the report focuses on the borough's joint health and well-being strategy, emotional health and well-being strategy, pharmaceutical needs assessment, joint strategic needs assessment, children and adolescent mental health service, local transformation plan, better care fund, Berkshire West integrated care system, and the National Health Service long-term plan. A refreshed strategy is designed around the overreaching vision of creating healthy and resilient communities, within which there are 3 key priorities. One is creating physically active communities. Second is reducing social isolation and loneliness. And third, narrowing the health inequality gap. The action plan, which has been named Strategy into Action, will be co-produced by the Wellbeing Board and the key stakeholders in spring 2019. I therefore ask the Council members to vote the report as recommended.
Thank you.
Thank you. As Councillor Bowles deputy, I'm happy to recommend this report to the Council.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody who wants to ask any questions? Okay, are you prepared to vote on the report as it appears on the agenda? All those in favour? All those against? All those abstaining? That is carried. Okay, reports 106, reports from members appointed to outside bodies. Mr. David Ross.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have Councillor Barry as my seconder.
Thank you.
Very briefly, we have 29 bodies, and not bodies like that. They are our partners. They are the Council's partners, and it's good first that almost all reports have come in this year. But what I'd like to just say is, I think because they are these esteemed partners of ours, we all owe it to actually read all these reports, to find out where we're involved and what our representatives on these bodies are actually doing. The reports are there, and I'll put them forward so that them to be agreed by Council.
Thank you. Mr. Barron, would you like to say something?
I was to say I concur with Councillor Ross's remarks.
Thanks very much. Are there any other questions with regards to these reports? Now, some of these reports are tabled. You should have them in front of you. They don't all appear in your agenda. Are you happy to vote on them on that basis? All those in favour? All those against? All those abstaining? That is carried. Members' question time. 107. Rachel Shepherd debate.
You have allocated money to roadworks only in Barkham, Early, Twyford and Woodley. Why aren't the rest of WBC also getting these road repairs?
Thank you, Rochelle. Firstly, sorry to disabuse you, but I haven't allocated money anyway. The money is divvied out on the basis of robust data about the condition of the network. There's a longer-term programme of planned works to ensure the schemes can be implemented in a coordinated way to minimise the impact on the network and the disruption to road users. This is a requirement of the ST funding, An alternative approach, such as allocating funding on a ward basis, could exclude working through receiving central government grant and lead to a shortfall in the current highway budget. This year we got 1.177 million additional grant from the government for road repairs, and the council has recently announced where these repairs will take place. The work programme has been developed to focus on those areas where surveys, visual inspections, technical assessments and technical analysis have identified the greatest need. The council has to direct funding to areas where it considers schemes can be delivered within the time constraints of the grants without conflicting with other planned projects. It's quite tricky. As part of this grant, we've also left 113,000 aside for pothole repairs, so I'm looking forward to Beth's list when she gets that. In addition, apart from the 1.177 million, we spend 1.5 million on highways maintenance anyway, and in December I changed the process so that the details of all the potholes and where the money is spent are actually on the website, so I would urge you to read that. In January we spent 221,000 on pothole repairs, of which 43,000 was spent in Barkham, Early, Twyford and Woodley, and the rest wasn't. On December it was 163,000 spent, of which 28,000 was spent in Barkham, Early, Twyford and Woodley, and the rest wasn't. So to look at just the government grant money really doesn't give you the full picture. And obviously we're doing it on the basis of what needs doing most.
Do you have a supplementary question?
I could recommend two roads that really need to be worked on. One is Arbor Lane in Winnish, the other is Twyford Road in Hurst. Wayne, wake up.
Thank you. We'll take a look at those on the road survey data. I've got nice maps of the whole borough showing the roads that need doing. There's an awful lot needs doing. I'd like a lot more money. But we'll have a look at those as well.
Having now had the chance to read the court appeal decision between Woking Borough Council and How Hatch Sheeplands representatives, I have very serious concerns about how Woking Borough Council has approached this case, specifically the reference to abuse of process contained in the legal decisions. It would appear that Woking Borough Council decided to prosecute How Hatch Sheeplands representatives on 18th of May 2015. Can you provide the total Woking Borough Council costs, including legal costs, plus broken down into Woking Borough Council staff costs, legal costs and other, of pursuing the case against How Hatch Sheeplands since that date? Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay, for your question. Although the court case has now concluded for the criminal proceedings, the court has yet to determine the cost for the prosecution, and as such, this is still subject to litigation. I'm unable, therefore, to give you the information at the present time. The information for internal staff costs is impossible to quantify, since there are no records of the amount of time spent on any particular matter. The Council also receives costs awarded to it by the court against Mr Scott in respect of a number of court proceedings, so these costs should be offset against any costs in the most recent case.
Thank you.
Bit of a non-answer, never mind.
Accurate though.
Since my question was submitted, there has been a planning inspectorate appeal decision. Can you advise what the Woking Borough Council costs of this appeal and process was, please?
Yeah, no costs were awarded either way, so no costs.
Yeah, but I'm looking at what our costs were, not that there were no costs.
Well, as in the last costs, our internal costs don't get quantified per individual case.
But still legal costs.
The lawyers work on individual cases and they work on another case, so yeah, we can't stop them, and it's not like private practice, unfortunately.
I will run to you, Julian.
Good evening. Right, okay. We've recently seen the public information stating that Woking Borough Council is proposing to spend 17.2 million on a warehouse in Peterborough as one of its investment properties. It seems a little odd that this property is so far outside of the Woking Borough Council area and is valued on its website at only 15.9 million. Please can you explain how property investments are selected by the Property Investment Working Group and put me in the direction of its terms of reference?
Thank you for your question. The Council Investment Board has approved a proposal to bid to purchase an investment property in Peterborough. You're quite right. The bid process is competitive, commercially sensitive and confidential therefore, so it wouldn't be appropriate to discuss any of the specifics in the forum at this stage. The rest is proposed on the basis the property is valued at 15.9 million, which is in fact incorrect. It is likely that the figure of 15.9 has been extracted from the seller's agent's marketing particulars, which sets out a proposal inviting offers in excess of 15.9 million. Unlike residential property, where in most places of the market it might be assumed that an asking price is indeed the price at which the house might transact, the investment market is a little bit more complicated. It's not normal for a seller to offer commercial property investment asset for sale at a fixed price. Instead, it is normal for a seller to invite competitive bidding so they can select their preferred buyer by reference to a wide range of criteria, including but not limited to price. The seller usually invites bids above a low threshold to ensure the proposal appeals to a wide audience. Bids are then whittled down through a course of often several rounds until the seller selects a preferred buyer. It is the council's actual experience that bids can be won primarily on track record, professional credibility, and quality of bid without necessarily submitting the highest price. And I think you've heard Anthony described to you earlier that we have a very experienced team in this area. Several of the council's acquisitions have been won on this basis in the face of higher bids, indicating higher market value than the council has actually paid. The council has acted in accordance with independent professional advice in all its investment dealings. In the case, our advice confirms that the value of the Peterborough property is comfortably in excess of the level above which the seller has invited bids. This is not surprising, it's perfectly normal. The strategic location of this property, together with all the other key criteria of this property, is crucial to its appeal and value as an institutional calibre investment asset. It's located in a central position.
Can you wind up, please?
Yes, okay. All the council, I'm getting to the end, all the council investment assets are selected in accordance with the council investment policy approved by the executive on the 28th September 2017, minutes 49 and 53 refer. The question will be aware that much of the detail of this policy was considered under a Part 2 report and remains commercially sensitive and confidential. Minute 53. Thanks.
Yes, well, you still haven't pointed me exactly in the direction of where it is, other than telling me where it's discussed. I'm really not impressed that when we're spending public money that the process isn't clear. What I would like to know is on what grounds do you invest outside of the borough? That would be something.
Yeah, well, that depends on the commercial suitability of the property. There have been some changes also to the government suggestions on what we should or shouldn't do, and we are adhering to those policies. I'm happy to give you full details.
Send me what you got. Thank you.
Gary Cowan.
I'd like to ask in my name.
Thank you, Gary. Just hang on a moment.
Thank you. I'd like to make a point of personal explanation, since I am physically named in this question, where Councillor Cowan said reportedly that I said the four councils can achieve this huge task ahead. My only participation in that meeting was I chaired it. I did not make that statement whatsoever, and I respectfully ask Councillor Cowan to withdraw that sentence and it be recorded in the minutes. Thank you.
Gary, you've heard Keith's request.
I took the words from the article in the paper. But if it makes Keith happy, I'll withdraw those four words, but I will investigate a bit more and see. Get to the bottom of it.
Thank you, Stuart. I'd like to answer the question.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Gary, for your amended question. Since the Berkshire Local Authorities jointly commissioned and published the Berkshire, including South Bucks Strategic Market Assessment 2016, the government has introduced a new national planning policy framework and a planning practice guidance, which changes the way the need for housing is calculated. At the meeting of the Executive on October 2018, an amended programme for the local plan was agreed. The programme, which was endorsed by the cross-party planning and transport member steering group, which I think you're a member of, Gary, ensures opportunity for residents to engage in the process and help us shape how we manage development. Around 1,500 responses have been received to the recent consultation, and I thank all those who took part and time to attend these events and respond. Officers are in the process of analysing this important feedback. Moving forward, the adopted programme is that we consult on a draft of the local plan in autumn 2019. A further consultation on the proposed submission local plan will occur in the summer of 2020, with the submission to government for examination in the spring of 2021. Whilst this is our adopted programme, we hope to be able to move faster. I'm sure you agree that the constant changes of government policy and guidance are not helping anyone in preparing plans. Notwithstanding the difficulties, we continue to progress our local plan work, following the clear process and requirements set out in the legislation and government policy. So, while we're putting together our new local plan, it's clear that our existing planning strategy set out in the core strategy is working, looking at the number of homes built, under construction and committed. More than sufficient homes are capable of being delivered to meet the past and current government expectations. We're having in excess of 5 years housing and supply and comfortably passed the government's new housing delivery test, which looks at the sufficiency of delivery over the previous 3 years.
Gary, supplementary question?
Yes, thank you for that, Stuart. I've studied the local plan from our neighbours, local neighbouring authorities, which are all very well advanced, having been subject to examinations of public. Bracknell Forest proposed cooperation with Royal Borough on unmet housing need, and they have greenbelt issues. Reading have formally requested that Wokingham accommodate their unmet need to 2036, for the numbers to be agreed another time, along with nomination rights on affordable housing, discussions about developer contributions to the CIL, which Mark Ashwell was positive about, but which West Park said no way. The most damning comments came from the Royal Borough's inspector, who challenged the greenbelt along with council use of separate, and this is the key point, separate east and western HMAs rather than a single HMA, which could better address the issues of unmet need in the county. And she added no house could go in the plan without a sang. And on Greenbelt, she raised the point of whether neighbouring authorities could have the Royal Borough out. The only comment from Wokingham to any of these public inquiries was no action needed. My question therefore is no action needed a right and proper way to comment on our neighbours' plans, as they will have serious implications on our new local plan update, now delayed to 2021?
Thank you. Stuart Murray.
Well, thank you. I think I sort of understand what you're saying, but I'm a bit confused, to be perfectly frank. Reading might have asked for us to take some of the houses. We certainly haven't said yes as far as I'm concerned, and nor will we. Anyway, I'm happy to talk to you about this more offline, so I don't think I totally understand what you're trying to do.
Thank you. Sarah Kerr.
Thank you. In September last year, Wokingham Borough Council received a joint letter from the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government and the Department of Transport, written in response to the Department of Transport's publication of the Inclusive Transport Strategy. This publication asks local authorities to pause the development of shared space schemes whilst it updates its guidance to ensure that road schemes like this meet the statutory requirements under the Equalities Act 2010. The Department for Transport did this due to long-standing concerns raised by vulnerable road users and is the consequence of the recommendations of a Parliamentary Select Committee published on the 25th of April 2017 that recommended a halt to shared space schemes that remove curbs and signal-controlled crossings, as well as a review by the Chartered Institute of Highways and Transportation Review of Shared Spaces published in April 2018. With this in mind, I have concerns about the redevelopment of California Cross, given that the design that went to public consultation at the end of last year has several shared space characteristics. To add to these concerns, the parking bays of the design are at an angle to the carriageway, which is a major route, and means the vehicles leaving the parking bays would need to reverse onto the carriageway.
Could you please ask the question? I'm
putting context in. At the Community and Corporate Overview and Scrutiny Committee earlier this year, where the new marketplace was under review, one of the senior highways engineers stated that parking bays like this were too dangerous to implement, where a vehicle reverses at an angle onto a busy carriageway. As the California Cross parking bay proposals appear to be similar, and given the request from the government to pause the development of shared space schemes, what is happening with regards to your plans for California Cross?
Thank you very much. The California Cross proposals, as you say, were progressed and broadly approved as part of a planning permission obtained by the developers associated with the Arborfield SDL development. A decision was made by council members to take the scheme in-house and widen its scope, rather than let the developers deliver the scheme included within its application. Council is fully aware of the publications from the DFT with regard to the shared space schemes. However, as the DFT publications came at a point after the project had reached an advanced stage of design, and given that the scheme is not fully shared space scheme, for example, a curb up stand, which I now know are the ways curbs stick up, a decision to progress with the project up to concept design stage is made, including public consultation on the proposals. Progression to this stage allows us to gather valuable site data that can be used for whichever scheme is designed to progress, comply with the planning consent requirements, and to take on board the consultation results. In addition, there is further time to consider the scheme due to the recently identified utilities works within the vicinity of California Cross, which has resulted in a construction embargo in this area until July 2020. Should further advice be provided by the DFT during this time, this will, where appropriate, be incorporated into the scheme. WBC has followed the principles of the quality assessment guidance, and during the consultation period, including additional consultation with vulnerable groups and disabled users. These findings have been fed into the concept design and discussed in the public consultation. With regard to parking arrangements, we're considering amending the design from the current proposal to stop vehicles using the parking bays reversing off the main carriageway. We still have to work on this to check the flows and turning circles, which we will do so when the project reaches the detailed design stage. You're not alone with this. I've also had feedback from Councillor Weeks, whose ward this is in, saying very similar things to what you said.
Sarah, you're something.
Thank you. Really pleased to hear that this has been taken on board. Just finally, obviously it's local authorities' statutory requirement to ensure that evidence and equalities have been taken into consideration. The best way of doing this is an equality impact assessment. Is there going to be one that's going to be out there? Have you got another way of evidencing this? Will it be an equalities impact assessment?
I can assure you that whichever way we do this scheme, we will make sure that it's in full compliance with all the guidelines around equality. And if you want to talk about it a bit further, I'd be happy to.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Director of Adult Social Services is a statutory post, and appointments must be agreed by full council. So in July last year, Council voted to have a joint Director of Adult Social Services with the Royal Borough of Winton Maidenhead for a 9-month trial with effect from the 1st of August. That 9-month period expires at the end of April. What are the proposed arrangements for the post of Director of Adult Social Services after the end of April?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And thank you for your question, Prue. With regard to the arrangements for the post of Director of Adult Services, which is commonly known as DAS, after the end of April, following a review of the trial period and recommendations of the current chair DAS, it has been decided to appoint a permanent full-time director for WBC. This decision was taken by the interim chief executive and the leader in conjunction with executive members and directors as per the constitution. It was considered that whilst the trial had been successful, the arrangements did not provide the council with the capacity at director level that is required. In terms of the appointment, the constitution was changed at full council 21st of February, and the Personnel Board now has the authority to appoint both the Directors of Children's Services and Adult Services. The position has been advertised, and the Personnel Board is convening interviews to be shortlisted, the shortlisted candidates on the 26th of March.
Yes, I do have a supplementary. I'm glad you've got something in hand. However, it was the full council that agreed a trial arrangement, a trial joint arrangement. Shouldn't there have been some sort of report back and an opportunity to comment from councillors before other people made a decision, which I haven't seen documented or reported back to us anywhere?
As I say, the decision was made by the appropriate officers I'm happy to look into what you've suggested, Prue, and come back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With the Executive Member for Highways, please update me on progress with implementing a system for recording highways land across the borough, which can then be used to identify householder encroachments onto highways land.
Thank you. Just to reassure you, the Council already has an available data layer on its GIS system which shows the extent of the highway boundaries. This information is actively used by the Highways team to check encroachment issues and when queries are made. Moving forward, this data layer will be incorporated into the new HIMS system, which is the one we saw at the presentation recently, which will be implemented as part of the new highways and transport contract and will be available on the 1st of April. I would like, and I've asked to see if we can actually make it available for the public to view as well, so that everybody's got a view of the boundaries and can make their own decisions about encroachment.
Yeah, thanks. I think you've partly answered it. Just with clarification here then. We were promised 2 years ago a specific piece of software that would actually do this. If that's what you're describing, that's good. What I'm looking for is, I'll phrase it slightly differently, when will you actually start to actively use that information to reverse these encroachments so that we gain back physical control of what was and remains highways land, so that infrastructure projects that are being stopped or more like long delayed by household encroachments can proceed?
I can't speak for what was said years ago, but we're already using that data. I've certainly used it in the last few weeks, a query about highways encroachment highways now, and I'm sure people will be happy to share with you the outputs of that system so you can see for yourself.
Okay, I have a further question.
Thank you very much for allowing the question, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Julian, for your statement earlier. My question is, what are the implications for the Council since Dornus went into administration, including but not limited to costs, timescales, quality of work and warranties?
Clive, thank you very much for your question. Most of this actually was covered in a briefing meeting that we had with your leader and also Imogen attended earlier this week. However, I will go into the answer as fully as I can at this time. First of all, we should recognise the very good work over the years that Dornus have carried out for WBC. The most recent being the excellent delivery of the Bowen School in Harbourfield. They had a local office in Thatcham and employed staff and tradespeople from within our borough who have now been redundant. They also worked with many SMEs, several of whom operated from within and around our borough. It's also to be recognised that the construction industry generally has suffered from a lack of available credit and finance, particularly following the demise of Carillion last year, which has and continues to constrain the cash flow and liquidity of many companies, both large and small, across the country. Since being advised of Dornus entering administration, this council acted very swiftly by instigating our contingency plan for this very event. Indeed, within 2 hours, the Dornus contract had been terminated, which then allowed us to take back control of the site and ensured it was secure that very night. And this put us on the front foot and allowed us to continue with the works. Indeed, by the following morning, another contractor had been employed on the site, and this allowed works to continue on that morning, on Friday of last week, including the tenant fit-outs and the gas main installation in Rose Street. We have identified the works required to open the most immediate retail units, and those works continue, and will allow 3 of them to open generally in line with last week's plans. The first indeed being beyond the download in Rose Street this coming weekend. We're in discussion with all tenants, and specifically those in the next tranche who are planning to open in April. It is the case that maybe 2 of them may be delayed. We're currently working through the outstanding works necessary to see them open successfully. We will understand more in terms of impact on programme in the coming weeks. We also continue discussion with several operators who are ready to sign, again understanding the specific works required for each to enable us to provide access and then being able to trade successfully. It is inevitable that the cost of the scheme will increase, but it must be recognised that some of this may be able to be set off against donors. There will be discussions with the administrator in this respect. We hold contingencies for the project specifically and for the wider programme of works, which we believe at this stage will be adequate to cover the increased cost. Therefore, at this time, we do not foresee that an increase in the budget will be required to complete the works. It is certainly our intent to maintain all warranties where we can. We have already discussed this issue with the design consultants in an effort to secure these warranties. There were also warranties in place with key subcontractors, and we're in discussion with them to understand if we can secure warranties from them for their design and installation of the works.
Thank you, Philip. Do you have something,
Yes, I do, please. You might not be able to answer this, maybe Julian will want to. What about the two non-Peach Place contracts that Dawners had? That's Matthews Green and Arnold Green Primary School. Tell us what's going to happen about them.
Yeah, as with the previous statement, they're currently under review, so Dawners have gone into administration, so clearly they're not going to be proceeding with those. So we need to adopt the same process that we have done on Peach Place. Those two contracts, review them, and if necessary, retender.
Thank you very much. We move on to item 108, minutes of council meetings and warrant matters. No supplementaries. Please show who to ask. We're going to have a really long night tonight. Okay, Ian Pitter. Thank you. I think we've got everybody. Andy Fry.
Very, very quickly, this one's for Pauline. I was wondering if either Pauline or preferably an officer would meet with me in residence to look at the state of the crash barriers on London Road and to talk to residents about how safety could be improved.
Please.
I'd be delighted to.
Can you just be quiet, please? Pauline, sorry.
You said yes.
You answered that. I couldn't hear it for somebody was speaking. Okay. Ian Pitter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. For the Executive Member of Highways, sorry about this, Paul, we've got late to the party. In the period 2015 to early 2017, this Conservative-led council promised residents of Finchampstead, especially those looking to send their children to the new Bohan School, that a cycle path would be built down the 9 Mile Ride. In 2017, this promise was reneged upon, and instead a country-based Greenway route was built via California Country Park, which many parents felt was too isolated. Last Friday, I visited the school on a dry and reasonably warm day. Whilst I recognise the school is only about half full at present, nevertheless, I was not actually surprised to see that sheds for about 150 bikes contained only about 4 bikes. As a replacement for the reneged upon 9 Mile Ride Greenway, isn't your Greenway a failure as a cycle route to the school at this time? Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Pauline?
Thank you, Ian. It'd be good to have a longer conversation about this. I understand that it's due to the lack of space, but I'd be happy to have a conversation.
Hence the previous question.
Thank you. Emma Hobbs?
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. This is a question to Highways. Sorry, Pauline. Chartwell council tax is approximately £3.1 million to this council. And I'm asking the Highways regarding a pedestrian crossing for the Piglet School. What is the latest situation, as I am only looking for a roughly 4.75% of the £3.1 million.
Thank you, Emma. I believe officers sent some information about the cost of the survey and some suggested dates to you, and we'd be happy to survey and see. That's what I was told. So happy to provide it anyway. If you have a look through your emails, you might find one.
Gary?
A question for Anthony. The annual pay policy statement required under the Localism Act states that the highest paid employee in this council was the interim chief executive at £146,000 a year. She was appointed at the November the 18th council. My question is, what was the financial settlement, if any, this council made to the interim chief executive officer?
Terry, that's also one question. I'm not going to allow that. Okay, you need to table that to the question when we make the council meeting. It's not a normal question. Carl, there you go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not quite sure who this is at, so it's a bit of executive looking roulette. The East Reading Mass Rapid Transit was turned down and subsequently lost its LEP funding. It seems to me that the rationale for the building of the Thames Valley Park and Ride programme per hour is gone. When other options are considered, especially the second level of the Winnersh Park and Ride, which I understand is a proposal that's coming forward, combine that with the difficult and resource-intensive design for this difficult site, why are we spending an awful lot of money just to provide 250 spaces?
Pauline.
I think that's probably for me, and I'll find out and get back to you if that's all right, Carl.
Thank you very much. Mine is a ward question, and again it's for our Deputy Leader, Pauline Jorgensen. A couple of vulnerable residents have approached me concerned that the post office in Asda precinct is closing after receiving a letter through, or leaflet through their letterbox. Please can you confirm if this is true?
Thank you, Tim. I think the reason Tim's asking me for this is I've been on planning in early town for rather a long time. I remember when the original planning application for Asda was approved. There was a requirement in the original planning application that the smaller units were maintained and were not encroached by Asda, which were the agreements when the roof was put on. I saw some noise on Facebook and from residents about the potential for the closure of the post office right about the middle of January. So I went on to planning enforcement and planning to find out what was going on. Planning very helpfully spoke to the store manager and pointed out that there was a planning restriction on Asda moving into the floor space. He said Asda had no intention of moving into the floor space occupied by the smaller units. He said the lease on some of the smaller units came up for renewal last July, and Asda decided not to renew some of the leases because they believe they'll be able to attract other concessions which will be more complementary to the supermarket. In other words, there are other concessions which will not compete with products sold by Asda and which will increase visitors and footfall to the store. So therefore there are no breaches to Planning Commission. Separately, I know several councillors have emailed the Asda CEO directly just to ask where the post office is going, and we look forward to a reply to that.
Thank you, Pauline. Sarah?
I'm really sorry to warn this for you. It's about greenways again. Really pleased to see the route beyond greenways being consulted on at the moment, which covers west side of my ward. The east side of my ward, which is the area west of Finch-Hampstead Road and Limbs Lane and the surrounding roads, there are provisional plans for a greenways route called Route D. We're desperately needed some infrastructure in this area which encourages active travel and takes cars off the network. However, the route suggested does not appear to take into consideration the key destination of potential users, particularly cyclists. For example, there's no direct route planned to Wokingham train station or business areas like Mollymans Lane. To unlock this demand and make this more successful, the route needs to help residents get to where they want to go in the shortest, safest and most convenient route. So therefore, will various stakeholder groups be consulted on Route D at a much earlier stage in the process than Route B to ensure the most appropriate route is identified to ensure these greenways have reached their full potential, particularly in cycling routes?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is to the Executive Member for Environment. In my ward at Southlake, we've got a big problem with fly tipping. It's particularly bad in the car park off Kingfisher Drive near the Crater Shops. Can you explain what this council is doing to address the issue?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Pimentel. Fly tipping is an issue across the borough, with 10% reported incidents happening in Woodley. We have a very robust approach towards fly tipping, ensuring it's removed as soon as practical and following up on those where we find evidence with a fixed £400 penalty notice issued where appropriate. However, the issues encountered at South Lake Parade are not as straightforward as normal fly tipping, due to its being the accustomed location for the flats above the shops to place their weekly waste for collection. These flats were built with no interior storage and no secure outside facility to place it ahead of collection. To make matters worse, the flats have a high turnover with regular deposits of larger household items having to be cleared, and sometimes attracting rubbish from other sources. Officers have tried to engage with the occupants with little success, so are now looking for a more formal enforcing approach with the residents of the flats, landlords, managing agents of the flats, and any other residents in the locality who places their waste at the location, if we could track them down. Officers would be happy to meet with you and other ward members to go through the issues and review what we think are the best options for success. And I would be very pleased to partake in that as well.
Rachel Burgess.
Thank you. My question is for Councillor Bath. In the Bramble Centre, in my ward of Meads, a weekly breastfeeding clinic is run by trained volunteers from the Breastfeeding Network, providing an extremely valuable service for new breastfeeding mothers in the area. I've met with the users of this service and I also know from personal experience how vital these support networks can be to encourage and support breastfeeding, which we all know has numerous lifetime benefits for babies and mothers. My residents, however, are concerned that the funding the council provides for this service is to be cut from April onwards, which would cause this weekly clinic to close completely later this year, as there will be no funding to supervise and train volunteers. It would be an absolute tragedy if the support is no longer available for our new mums and their babies. While the service has already been cut back massively in recent years, the funding needed to enable this clinic to continue sustainably is just £6,500 a year. Does the executive member agree with me that this clinic provides a vital service in my ward, and will he intervene to ensure that this funding is retained?
Thank you for your question. I will look into this. I do support what you're saying, and I'll discuss with you on a personal basis. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think this is probably for John, but somebody can take it with it. It's about the allotments in Winnersh, which are having to be moved to make way for the roundabout at the end of North Woking Distributor Road. The site for the new allotment is being prepared, but is several months behind what was originally planned, has missed the last deadline of March the 4th for handover, is now not to be handed over until the 7th of April. And the slippage, which is entirely the fault of this council, means that allotment holders have lost the planting season. They've been offered a few weeks into the beginning of May to move their plants and trees and sheds, but this ignores the fact that it's now too late to move plants and trees because we're already in the growing season. This council is still making unilateral changes to the facilities that will be provided on the new site. The £100 compensation limit previously agreed is now woefully inadequate. Please will the exec member meet with the ward members and representatives of the parish council to try and sort this out.
Also, I'd be very pleased to. Philip Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a question for the leader of the council. Julia, like you, I always felt that I've listened to my residents, and in this case, it's of course Embrook. So I wrote to you a couple of weeks back following a residents' meeting with the residents of Park Road, Park Avenue, and Wellington Road in Wokingham, where Ulrich Clark and Councillor Campbell-White from the Town Council also joined me to discuss their opposition to the WHL plans for the site at the corner of Station Road and Wellington Road. The borough owned this gateway site to our town, and after several iterations of the design, WHL have put forward a planning application to develop a flat-roofed 18-flat apartment block over 2 commercial units. The many residents that attended the meeting expressed a range of concerns that I feel very reviewed by WHL. So can you please confirm that this application will be held back to allow WHL the opportunity of review and to meet those residents' concerns prior to resubmitting in the coming months? I would emphasise that the residents are not against this site being developed, they just expect a design that's more amenable.
Mr. Mayor, I'm the chairman of Woking Council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a bit of a difficult one because the crux of the statement being made is about design. And of course, design is subjective. What I would say is, going back to October of last year, we have met residents and ward members to discuss this much-needed site for 18 affordable homes. In the consultations that we've had, we have made 14 changes to the design already. So we'll continue to listen and work with the parties that are interested. And as the council's wholly owned affordable housing company, I'd like to think that we listen and consult more than perhaps a private developer would. But as I say, this design does have the full support of the professional planning office team at WBC. So I'm not sure if we're going to be able to rework the design entirely, but we'll continue to do all we can with the aim of ultimately bringing forward a scheme that will help those that need housing the most. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is a question for John Coulson. Residents of Hornbeam Drive believe the gutters are not being cleaned according to the published schedule, and the drains appear to be clogged with mud and debris, with the latter adding to a real risk of flooding. Could these related issues be investigated, and if found to have substance, an action plan be implemented that I can communicate with residents?
Thank you very much, Mr. Jones. I missed part of that question through interfering noise, but the answer is yes.
Do I need to repeat the question or even come up with another one?
Good evening. Another question for Pauline, please. I've had several residents approach me about parking problems here at Shoot End. The cash machine for the meter for the car park doesn't accept money. It only does Ringo, and a lot of people complain that they can't seem to use it. I quite often come across older people trying to get services from the council who don't know when I come during the day and they don't have phones and who can't use Ringo, but the machine's been down for some time. Can you advise when it's going to get fixed?
I'm afraid I don't have a plan for when each individual machine is going to be sorted out. We have approved the expenditure on the new machines. The issue we've had with the old machines is, firstly, they're very old and they're very difficult to get spares for, and also they've been subject to some vandalism, certainly a cockpit path, which didn't help. So we started off replacing the machines with the one in the cockpit path, which are being done shortly and might even be already underway. I need to check on that exactly. I'll find out for you where these ones are on the schedule. I've asked for a plan anyway.
Sorry, Pauline, one more question. While the residents of Winnish are very happy that Winnish Relief Road Part 2 is going forward, when will you remove these unsightly stumps and also plant some new trees somewhere else in Winnish for the ones you've taken down?
I didn't realise my remit extended to unsightly stumps, but I'll find out again.
The Relief Road, they cut down the tree.
Yeah.
All right, that's all through the members' questions. We move on to number 109, which is the leader and the deputy executive. Members, 20 minutes is allowed for this. Julian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to start by saying I'm pleased to confirm our new CEO, Susan Parsons, joins us on Monday, and look forward to welcoming her to WBC. And I'm sure that we'll all make her feel welcome as she gets to work with what is a very challenging role. I'd also like to pay special thanks to our interim CEO, Heather Thwaites, who has done a magnificent job in re-establishing our corporate leadership team and winning back the trust of our staff following a number of turbulent months. Heather has shown herself to be a great leader, very approachable, results-focused, and someone who takes her team with her. And we'll be very sad to see her go, but at least she's not going until the end of April. I don't normally get a clap after my speech. Okay. Not for you. Over the last few months, feedback from residents on future development has been deafening through petitions, motions, and response to the local plan update. Sessions around the borough. It is clear that residents are saying enough is enough, and a view that we totally agree with, and have been putting forward to government for many years, but they are simply not listening. So let's put some facts on the table. We have approved applications for 8,187 houses, with another 2,013 in the pipeline for the South Woking Strategic Development location. Without the 2,013, that is the equivalent of 11.2-year land supply based on the government requirement rate of the build of 854 houses per year. That is over twice the required rate of the 5-year land supply. We've clearly demonstrated time and time again that this council is not going to be obstructive, that it's going to do its bit and to provide housing, especially affordable housing, that the government insists we have to. But despite the government continues to pile on the additional numbers on us, numbers which are higher than our neighbours, and it's almost like being rewarded for not doing the right thing and penalised for doing the right thing. So what have we been doing over the last few years to discuss and negotiate with government and its agencies to address the respective overdevelopment? The previous 3 leaders have all had face-to-face meetings with the Prime Minister. Other executive members have met with the relevant ministers. They've even met with the Chief Planning Inspector, all to no avail. No change in numbers. We're told you have to take them. We've now reached a crossroads where enough is enough. We have to find a different way to convince the government to be more reasonable, and today I'm announcing what I plan to do, and I'm looking for support from all residents and councillors regardless of their party allegiance for my proposals. My team and officers have looked at many options over recent weeks, and we wanted to go for a referendum where we would ask residents for their views on our housing numbers, but regretfully we've been advised that after taking legal advice this would be illegal, which is unfortunate to say the least. So instead we're having to fall back on a special consultation. I know many residents will comment that they have subscribed to consultations in the past, but this is very different. Each resident will get a letter that will pose a very simple question. Do you support the government lifting housing numbers in a simple yes or no manner? We want as many residents to respond as possible, so we can go back to the government to say, look, all these residents can't be wrong. You have to do something about these overly high housing numbers. The more responses we get to our argument, the better. When I took over as leader, I said I'll do things differently. I would listen to our residents and act in their best interests. And I hope everyone will agree that this move is a bold and strong move to put our residents centre stage on this battle to get the government to be more reasonable in their demands on us and build more and more houses. If we can come together, residents and all councillors, with a single aim to get this government to listen, we might just get some movement. If we don't work together, it's highly unlikely we will get anywhere. I cannot guarantee that we will be successful, but I made a commitment when I took over as leader to try and find solutions to problems, to work for the common good, and I hope everyone will get behind this campaign so we can move forward together. Thank you.
Could I make a statement? Thank you, Julian, for that. It's encouraging that you have come up with that idea. We've got a government petition out at the moment which is covering that very issue, that we think that Woking had already taken 13,500 houses in the current local plan, and that to have the number of 854 or 894 or whatever it is foisted on us is totally and utterly unacceptable and will ruin and destroy our area. And we will more than happy from our side join in and help you with this, because I think it is something we have to, because if we don't do it now, our area will be ruined and it would be built on and concreted over. And the sort of comments and one of the questions that came about the mass destruction of trees and hedgerows that we had down in Cutbush is absolutely disgraceful. The way the developers are getting away with things, maybe legally, but it's absolutely unacceptable, and I will pledge from our side that we will work with you and help you on that issue, and if you need information to go out around to all parts of the borough where we have representations, we will support you.
Just a quick question, how much will it cost?
My speech, I'm very reasonable. in terms of the cost to write to every resident, probably about a fifth of what it costs to do a planning appeal.
And the stamps for the back of returns?
Yeah, that would be included. So,
but you bought them before they went up?
to give you a number, probably somewhere in the region of £20,000 to £30,000, which is a significant amount of money. We looked to do a referendum, which we wanted to do on the same day as the election, and we were told we couldn't do that. We looked to do a referendum on a Saturday, so actually more people would actually take part in it. The main thing is, yes, it is an expense, and we recognise that that is a cost to the council taxpayer, but every time we fight these appeals, it's £100,000 or more each go. This is the one chance that we've got to say to our residents, we've heard what you're saying, we're listening, we're doing something, get behind us. That then gives us the remit to go back to government to say, we are one, we can get behind this.
If nobody objects, I'm going to add 4 minutes to the time. You don't normally allow discussions such as this, but it's such an important issue in our ward, I was quite comfortable to do that. So if nobody's got any objection, I'll put 4 minutes on the time for the executive to speak. Who would like to speak on the executive? Okay. John Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. 3 months ago, my colleague and friend, the leader, did me the honour of inviting me to join his executive with a portfolio of environment, libraries and leisure. A portfolio which spans the whole council and with few exceptions is resident and customer interfacing roles. I'm delighted that I have a dream team of officers committed to continuous improvement and to delivering the best resident services which our sparse resources can afford. I'd like to share with you a few highlights. The leader's policies, the environment is key to all our futures. We are committed to do the simple things first to improve air quality in Woking Town and Twyford. Simple campaigns to turn the engine off, smart traffic lights and bus emissions will make a significant difference. A campaign to lessen single-use plastic is being planned. Controlling noise and public realm cleanliness are key to well-being. Our response to failure modes is crucial. 21st century has transformed the way that we deliver customer services. The bottom line is the customer interface team, localities and customer service, which is charged with fixing queries at the first point where possible and proactively promoting online self-service options. We're committed to make the customer experience the best it can be, allowing specialists to do their jobs better, free from the more easily fixable issues. 7 years ago, we abrogated our licensing, trading standards and environmental health services to West Sparks. This really did not work for us, as it was non-sensitive to or responsive to WBC residents or ward members. Are you going to survive this, Pauline?
It's not
oh, concerns.
So stumps.
To rectify this service has recently become part of a jointly managed service for Bracknell, West Sparks and Woking. This change, together with a localities initiative, allows for service to be integrated and as responsive as any other service the council offers. I propose a cross-party working group will review all WBC PPP policies and services, or the licensing and appeals committee. There will be a consultation with members for issues related to their wards, and a right of review and or recall will be given to the licensing and trading standards committee, ward members and appropriate officers. We are introducing the food waste collection on 1st of April, together with a renewal of the contract with Veolia, which brings a new fleet of vehicles. Grass cutting last year was an issue. The contractor has brought new kit, increase in trained its workforce, and is subject to a high degree of council contract supervision. the work has started a lot earlier than previous years. I'm preparing an executive paper for submission early in the new municipal year for the building of the Twyford Hub, working in collaboration with the local community organisation, and I will be seeking council support for this project. Woking Borough Council is starting phase 2 of the Greenways project, connecting Arthurfield Green and Shinfield Parish to Woking Town, and the new developments in North and South Woking. I urge all members to contact me with issues for their wards. We must collectively aim to create Woking Borough as the best place to live for all our residents. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Despite the sad news about the demise of Dornus, that as I feel have been adequately covered in the leader's speech and in my response to Councillor Jones, we have good news. The first of our new Rose Street businesses to open will be Beyond the Download, as I mentioned earlier, and hopefully by this weekend, subject to payment completion. Despite rumours to the contrary, fitting out has not been held up at all, and we will be announcing other opening dates shortly. Interest has also been maintained by further tenants, and we hope to announce further names shortly. Elms has moved forward at a pace this week with the opening of Biscoe Way from Shoot End to link to Earl Crescent and the Elms multi-storey car park. This was opened yesterday, and at the same time we permanently closed the bottom of Elms Road to start ripping that up to extend the new town park. Agreement has been made with the Town Council to hand over the new park by the end of June with an extended lease. This means that the new enlarged children's play area will be operating in time for the school holidays. Aldi, the food supermarket, have been recruiting and are currently fitting out to open in late June, with Premier Inn currently on for an autumn opening. The new Everyman Cinema is currently looking to open early in the new year. So good news for new jobs, for new retailers, and for our young families.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to emphasise the excellent work of the Woking and Wellbeing Board. Over the next 3 years, the board will focus on 3 key areas. That's my apologies, the following key areas. Joint health and wellbeing strategy. The board has created a revised, punchy and a more meaningful strategy focusing on identifying key health and well-being indicators. We are now working on 3 key priorities: creating physically active communities, reducing social isolation and loneliness, narrowing the health inequalities gap. We now have an action plan which has been named Strategy into Action, will be coordinated and will be a report by the spring of this year. The next one is Woking Borough Council Emotional Health and Wellbeing Strategy. This strategy was developed in order to promote an integrated and holistic approach to children and young people's emotional well-being. It also looked at to develop stronger links between the local authority, voluntary sector and health with regards to delivering on the health and well-being agenda for children and young people. The next one is Wokingham's Pharmaceutical Needs Assessment. Every 3 years, the board is under statutory requirement to produce our borough's pharmaceutical needs. The assessment highlighted that Woking Borough has a good provision of essential and advanced pharmaceutical services that are well distributed around the borough. Children and adolescent mental health services, local transformation plan. In 2015, the government issued a report about why changes in mental health services for children and young people are needed. From this, a local transformation plan, LTP, was created by Berkshire West CCG. NHS England have approved the future in the LTP in October 2018. The LTP is about integrating and building resources within the local community so that emotional health and well-being support is offered at the earliest opportunity. The last one is Berkshire West Integrated Care System Operating Plan, and this is not commonly known as ICS. And the ICS plan is a partnership between Berkshire West CCG, the Acute Royal Berkshire Hospital and Berkshire Healthcare
foundation trusts and providers of GP services. Our ICS was recognised by NHS England as an exemplar area in June of 2017. I therefore commend the work of the board to this House.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to update you on a couple of issues briefly. Firstly, on the Borough Council's self-build project, Wheatsheaf Close. The Council has received £208,000 in funding from Homes England through the Community-Led Housing Fund. This will be used to help take the project forward and will be used, for example, for design and survey fees, helping fund a project manager who will work with the community and those interested in taking part, and helping the project move forward to outline planning permission. The Council is currently in the process of recruiting a project manager, and the current proposal is for the site to have 21 plots. The second thing I'd like to update you on is Gorse Ride Estate regeneration. Phase 1, which covers Arnott Avenue and Cocaine Court site. As you are aware, planning consent was achieved last October and the site has been cleared. The tenders for the building contractor are being evaluated and the project is on track for commencement of the development in June this year, with completion in late 2020. In Phase 2, the public consultation on the pre-application planning drawings took place at the project steering group on the 8th of February. And there were also 9 public exhibitions, information drop-in sessions on the 9th and 15th of February. Attendees were able to complete feedback forms or send them back later. All the events were very well attended with lots of positive feedback. The design team is putting together the planning application, which will go out to public consultation in May this year ahead of its formal submission. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay. So we're moving on now to item 110, statement from council-owned company. Alison.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. WHL now have 141 affordable homes. WHL have now delivered 141 affordable homes since the company's inception. Another 70 homes have planning permission and are either on-site or moving towards being on-site over the next few months. We have around 350 further units that we are working on achieving planning permission upon. And beyond this, we hope to be able to add further units to the pipeline by working closely with the council, on other council-owned land or through joint ventures with other parties. WHL was profitable last year for the first time and is predicting profits over the next 5 years of £1.2 million. Loddon Homes, as the council's for-profit registered provider, is working well, and the recent update to the 5-year business plan shows the company is profitable from next year onwards, based on a conservative approach to what schemes will be completed and purchased by Loddon Homes during this period. Due mainly to shared ownership sales, the company is expecting to generate cash revenues over the 5-year period, and we expect to be able to pay WBC Holdings Limited dividend payments during this time. Loddon Homes welcomed a new chair this year after Gary Cowan stepped down. Say thank you, Gary, for being here. With Councillor Kaiser and now Councillor Clark taking up this role. And Councillor Lindsay Ferris was also appointed to the board as a non-executive director, providing cross-party representation on the board, which is something that I hope will be welcomed across the chamber. He joins the existing independent NEDs that already sit on the board. It was recently decided that the board of Berrybrook Homes and WHL will combined and deal with both companies' business at a single meeting, split in two, as the companies will continue to trade as separate entities. It is proposed that the two Berrybrook Homes independent NED board members join WHL and Loddon Homes, one going to each sister company board. This will effectively fill an existing vacancy on the WHL board and replace one of the Loddon Home NEDs who is stepping down this summer. I think I should also thank Councillor Chopping for all of the hard work that he has put in over the 8 years that the local housing companies have been in existence. So thank you, David. The streamlining of these two boards will also provide a cost saving to WBC. And finally, Mr. Mayor, if you'll indulge me, this is my final attendance as a councillor at a council meeting, and I would like to place on record my thanks for the guidance and support of all councillors from all parties over the years, to thank the residents of my ward for affording me the opportunity to represent them, and a special thank you to the many officers who over the years have worked tirelessly to help achieve the results that I've pushed for. To members, officers and anyone still suffering from insomnia and watching, if you know of anyone who has an interest in helping change and shape this community and the borough and can dedicate a little time, energy and passion, please do seriously think about becoming a councillor. I can only speak from personal experience, but it has been the most fulfilling, at times challenging, but hugely enjoyable experience. The council needs fresh faces and fresh ideas, so please contact Democratic Services or your local councillors, and please look to get involved. Last of all, please can I urge all members to continue to think about future-proofing Wokingham Borough for those in their 20s, their teenage years and younger. The ability for this generation to get on the housing ladder in the years to come, through renting or buying, will be far more challenging than it was for almost all of us. We owe it to both those less fortunate and the citizens and voters of tomorrow to do all we can to make Wokingham Borough a great place to live and to work, and to ensure there is quality, affordable housing for this demographic. I think it's something I hope in the years to come you could all feel you've played an active part. Thank you, and I'll be rooting for you all from the sidelines.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Optilis continues to perform well in the challenging environment of adult social care. Financially, the company have again reported a surplus and remain bullish in terms of forecasted outturns. Optilis are currently running 12 projects across the business, ranging from enhanced GDPR and quality frameworks sorry, I can't read my writing. In-phase information platform and the rollout of successful technology-based auditor tool for services. Of these 10 projects are rated as green, highlighting good progress across the organisation. In respect of the auditor tool, it is something I'll talk a little bit about later, but in order to ensure that when CQC arrive, that they don't sort of find a bit of a black hole, the auditor tool is used to assess the services beforehand, almost on an ongoing basis. And this has made an extremely important contribution to the improvement that I'm going to talk about now. The teams delivered a good CQC rating following an inspection of our home care service, further underpinning the focus on quality. Workshops are now being planned to look at achieving outstanding ratings rather than just good. We have, over the last 12 months, moved to a position of 60% of services being in the requires improvement category to 90% in the good category. This is an excellent result and indicative of a quality-driven organisation. The HR team have been engaged with teams to co-produce the delivery plan arising from the staff survey. Additionally, Optilis are starting to benefit from the apprenticeship levy and developing a behaviours framework as a cornerstone of the values-based approach. Staff retention rates are tracking below 13%, which compares with an industry average of 29%. And even a couple of years ago, when I was chairman of the operating company, we were in the 20s, so the current team have done exceptionally well. From a growth perspective, proactive PR and market positioning has resulted in inquiries from 5 local authorities who have heard and seen the success of the Optilis model. As a result of these successes in quality delivery, Optilis have one local authority who has asked them to carry out a quality audit on their behalf of their providers who have fallen short on CQC inspections. Core website traffic has improved by 42% in the last 3 months, and Optilis have appeared in national and local press
every day in January, helping recruitment and profile raising activities. Customer forums to support co-production have taken place, and Optus have introduced the person-centred hour to staff training, which highlights from a customer's own perspective the little details that can help ensure that care provided is personalised and meets the person's needs. Thank you.
Now, I've had it indicated to me by a member who wishes to speak. I believe she's one of the members retiring. Has anybody any objection to? No?
No, I just wanted to jump on the back of Alistair's speech actually. I'm coming to the end of my term here as well now, after 10 years. Thoroughly enjoyed my time working here. I hope I've made some improvements along the way, some kind of impact. And again, thank you to everyone. You've all been absolutely wonderful. It has been quite a journey for me, as some of you will know. Yeah, just thank you and keep going. Well done. And most of all, my thanks to Keith Baker for sitting on my sofa 10 years ago, 11 years ago actually, when Woodley was... No, I'm going to, and told me that you only need to attend 4 meetings a year.
Members, remain seated. I'm going to do it all now. I must say it's been a great privilege for me to serve you and the residents of this borough. No matter what colour you are, you should be very proud of the work that you put into this council. And I just want to say thank you to those members who won't be here, especially the ones that won't be here for the wrong reason, but I would like to say thank you to all those members for the hard work that you've put in over the years. And I think we need to give ourselves a round of applause, but not until I've also thanked you as well personally. Without your help, I couldn't manage. That's it, members. You can now stand up.